Rent faced a massive dragon inside the dungeon. He realized too late that it was charging straight at him. Light and force surrounded him as the impact ended his life in an instant. Before that moment, serving as an adventurer in the kingdom of Yaren, for 10 years he hunted skeletons and goblins on the first floors, gathering small magic stones to survive. He remained bronze rank, trapped in a stagnant life with no progress. Rent counted the magic stones he gathered, knowing they were only enough to survive a few more days. His strength remained limited to lower floors. Facing stronger monsters meant certain death. Each day, he trained and explored, believing steady effort would eventually bring change. During one routine return, a hidden passage suddenly appeared before him, unmarked on any map. The new path stunned him, breaking 10 years of certainty. Though it promised rare treasure, entering without knowledge was reckless. Yet he stepped inside. A strange sound echoed from above. He looked up, sensing a presence descending from the darkness. Massive dragon revealed itself, its body dwarfing the dungeon walls. The creature radiated overwhelming power, a being said to rival demon kings and stand near the peak of existence. Frozen by fear, Rent realized escape was his only choice, yet his body failed to respond. Dragon descended, releasing overwhelming pressure that crushed the air around Rent. Light consumed the space between them. In an instant, the gap in strength became undeniable, and his long pursuit of greatness neared its end. The dragon's jaws closed over him, as his body was swallowed. A strange calm replaced fear and regret. Silence followed the destruction. In that darkness, something unusual began to occur. Moments later, Rent opened his eyes once more. Rent regained consciousness, despite being devoured. Though certain he had died, his awareness remained. When he examined himself, his throat produced no voice, and his body felt hollow beneath his clothes. The lowest bronze adventurer had become a skeleton. There was no doubt he had been eaten, yet he still moved. The truth forced him to accept he was now a dungeon monster. Instead of despairing, he steadied himself and considered what action he should take next. Rent imagined returning to town, but as a skeleton he would be hunted immediately. Even inside the dungeon, stronger monsters roamed nearby. Whether he chose to live or accept death, existence as a monster left him isolated from both humans and creatures. Defeat by another being would end him permanently. Yet hiding deep underground would change nothing. As one himself, he could grow stronger by feeding, choosing survival through evolution. A scholar explained that monsters absorb magical energy from defeated foes. Humans can also gain strength from what they overcome, yet their growth differs from that of monsters. Unlike people, monsters are deeply shaped by magic, and their bodies transform according to accumulated power. Their existence advances into a higher form, becoming stronger through repeated battles. Determined to understand this principle, the young man accepted the records offered to him and prepared to study further. The concept of existential evolution echoed in Rent's mind. If monsters could grow by absorbing magic from what he had read, skeletons that evolve could become ghouls. A ghoul's form resembled a human more than bare bones. With robes and a mask, he might return to town without immediate danger. Though uncertain of his identity as a monster, he chose action over doubt and prepared to fight. With renewed resolve, Rent advanced deeper into the dungeon, seeking strength through battle. Within the labyrinth, Rent raised his sword, determined to evolve into a ghoul. Rent, once a bronze adventurer, was eaten by a dragon in the dungeon. Inside the cavern, he chose to pursue existential evolution, convinced that defeating monsters could change his condition. Movement proved difficult, as the bare bones of his new body felt stiff and unstable. A faint magical force linked his bones together, enabling limited motion without muscles. Through this realization, he learned that magic was one of 3 energies shared by humans and monsters alike. He learned that magic allowed one to create fire, move earth, and control water and wind. Vitality formed another power, capable of strengthening the body beyond normal human limits. Spirit stood as the 3rd energy, rarely possessed, granted through divine favor and distant from ordinary people. As a former bronze adventurer, he had only a minor blessing suited more for survival than combat. Traces of his former abilities remained, enabling him to draw upon vitality, despite his undead form. Drawing upon vitality, he forced power through his fragile frame, and charged another skeleton within the dungeon. Enhanced strength gave him the advantage, allowing him to overwhelm his opponent and claim his first victory. As the enemy collapsed, fragments of energy drifted toward him, gathering around his body, absorbed differently than when he had been human, strengthening his undead form. From this, he understood that evolution required defeating foes of equal or greater strength to continue growing, believing growth would come through action. He continued exploring the labyrinth and resolved to keep fighting. Groups of skeletons blocked his path, and he faced them without hesitation, expecting steady improvement. After defeating many of them, no visible change occurred, leaving his condition unchanged. Over time, his control improved, allowing him to shatter skeletons more efficiently with strengthened strikes. He searched for stronger prey and soon fixed his gaze upon a lurking slime. The slime released an acidic blast, sending corrosive liquid across the chamber toward him. Recognizing the danger to his bare bones, he avoided a direct hit and observed its unstable, shifting form. Noticing a solid core within the mass, he decided that targeting it would be the most effective method. With a precise strike, he pierced the center, causing the creature to lose cohesion and collapse. After victory, he examined the remains, aware that the acid had little effect on him despite its usual potency. Examining the remains, he understood that slime fluids were valuable materials. Hunting such creatures alone brought little reward compared to organized parties, yet he had no companions. Unable to reveal himself in town, he accepted that gathering strength within the labyrinth was his only choice. Suddenly, energy surged through his frame, spreading across his bones in a violent reaction. The sensation confirmed real progress, far faster than when he had been human. A violent surge ran through his skeleton, rattling every bone as power gathered within him. Existential evolution began, twisting his frame as flesh formed over bone and his body reshaped. When the light faded, he stood as a ghoul, no longer bare skeleton, yet far from human. Testing his new form, he noticed improved movement and a rough voice that could almost pass for speech. Hearing metal clash nearby, he sensed a human presence and quietly observed a young swordswoman in the corridor. In a dark dungeon corridor, he hears the sharp sound of clashing swords echoing through the stone walls and senses someone fighting ahead. Aware of his skeletal form and considers whether he should approach, despite knowing he is no longer human. He understands that meeting a human directly would be dangerous and restrains himself. A young swordswoman stands ready, alert, and searching the corridor. She attacks the skeleton fiercely as he hides his presence and watches quietly. The young swordswoman faces the skeleton without fear. Observing her closely, he wonders why a beginner has reached this deep floor of the dungeon. Though never exceptional, he survived by gathering knowledge about adventurers and guild members to avoid trouble in Malt. Even as a beginner, he avoided reckless risks and contributed carefully. Now the true issue lies before him, her decision to fight, while he remains a monster who once stayed bronze for years. Image 1. The skeleton stands before the young adventurer, knowing such a monster usually requires a party to defeat. Instead of retreating, she charges forward and attacks repeatedly. Breathing grows heavier as her swings slow. Exhaustion begins to steal her chance to escape, counters and knocks her off balance. Fear flashes across her face as danger closes in. From the shadows, he decides to intervene, stepping in to strike the skeleton from behind and save her. Smashing the skeleton apart with a sudden blow that sends bones scattering across the dungeon floor. The young swordswoman stares in shock as the ghoul stands revealed. She raises her sword in fear, while he wonders if this power signals another step in his evolution. Understanding the danger of being exposed, he knows a ghoul's presence here would cause alarm if discovered. With resolve, he decides she cannot be allowed to escape and prepares to stop her. The girl screams as the ghoul steps forward, his sudden movement deepening her fear in the narrow corridor. Instead of attacking, he forces his stiff throat to produce broken sounds. Strained growls echo through the dungeon as he struggles to form words. Confusion replaces some of her fear when she realizes he is attempting to say something. With great effort, he finally manages to state his name, proving he still retains a fragment of humanity. Shock fills her eyes as she recognizes fragments of his name, and begins to suspect the ghoul was once an adventurer she knew. Carefully, she lowers her guard and studies him from a distance. Relief spreads across her face when she realizes he is still alive in some form. Gratitude replaces fear, and she bows deeply to thank him for saving her moments earlier. Regaining composure, she asks what happened to him, while he struggles to explain his strange transformation. Struggling to form words, he gestures awkwardly while trying to explain that he does not intend to harm her. Gradually, she understands his request and realizes he is asking for clothing to cover his exposed body. Remaining in that state would draw attention from other adventurers. She suggests using spare robes to help him disguise himself before returning to the city. After a brief pause, she tosses him a bundle of clothes, deciding to assist despite the unusual situation. Flinches at first, still shaken, but steadies herself while he keeps his distance and makes no sudden moves. Gratitude replaces fear as she acknowledges that he saved her life and admits he does not seem like a hostile monster. She introduces herself as Rena Lupage and promises to repay her debt. After she leaves, He reflects that their conversation went better than expected and notes her noble upbringing, trusting her judgment while preparing for whatever may follow. The city of Malt stands beneath a quiet sky, its guild building rising prominently within the kingdom of Yaren. Inside the guild, an employee notices that Lento, who visits daily, Sheila Abalse wonders about his sudden absence, troubled by the break in his steady routine. Each day he would enter the labyrinth, train, study, and submit reports without fail. She has watched over him for years and cannot ignore the unease growing in her heart. Seated at her desk, Sheila reflects that replacing an advisor after 5 years would not be unusual. Manny believed Lento lacked talent, but she saw something different in him and chose to guide him rather than dismiss him. He devoted himself to teaching newcomers basic manners and helping them understand the city, supporting decisions and preventing conflicts from spreading outside. The guild flourished, and countless adventurers and employees in Malt owe part of their growth to him. She remembers how he never gave up and carried himself without complaint, pursuing his goal with steady determination. His dream of becoming a mithril class adventurer still lingers in her thoughts. Snapping back to the present, she worries about his safety. The girl introduces herself as Rena and mentions turning back from the labyrinth earlier than expected. Sheila provides guidance, marking locations on a simple map for the beginner. Rena leaves the guild after thanking Sheila, unaware that the map she carries was first created by Lento years ago. Rent battles several skeletons at once, cutting them down with swift, decisive strikes. Unlike before, he no longer struggles against single foes, and powerful slashes split multiple enemies apart. Strength, magic, and vitality continue to grow within his new body. For the first time, he feels his swordsmanship match the image he once imagined while alive, and he reflects that even after death he must continue, walking his chosen path alone. When she suddenly speaks up close, fear makes her cry out at his appearance. Apologizing for frightening her, he notices that forming words has become slightly easier than before, including a robe, pouch, and small supplies for his journey. After putting them on, he hides his face beneath a sturdy hood, finally able to pass without being seen as a monster. Rena explains that the price was reasonable and reveals she purchased one more item for him. He examines the skull-shaped mask in his hands, realizing it will conceal his face more securely beneath the hood. Rent receives a metal mask from Lorraine inside the stone chamber. He carefully places the mask over his skull. It fits closely, almost as if it was shaped for him. The mask fully covers his face, hiding his true form behind solid metal. Lorraine observes that with proper clothes and the mask, he looks more human than a ghoul. When Rent tries to remove it, the mask refuses to come off, gripping him tightly. Recalls buying the mask from a small stall because she liked its design. Deciding to examine it, Rent prepares to test the mask's effect. Suddenly, a strange force gathers around his arm. The power holding the mask reveals unusual strength. Energy bursts outward as a spirit manifests from the mask. The presence surrounds Rent with intense light. She watches in shock, realizing this is her first time witnessing a spirit, an extremely rare phenomenon. Rent reflects on his past as a weak bronze adventurer whose skills were limited to basic purification. Through this spirit he believes he can wield power similar to a high-ranking cleric and dispel curses. The mask suddenly shifts, reacting to the spirit's force as he struggles to control it. Dark energy swirls around his head, overwhelming his body. Exhausted from the surge of power, Rent reassures Lorraine that he is only drained of spiritual energy. Rent apologizes, explaining that the spirit's power has increased only slightly, despite the surge. Guilt weighs on Lorraine as she admits she unknowingly bought cursed equipment for him. Determination fills Rent as he promises to grow stronger. Gratitude follows as he thanks her for the help, acknowledging that her support eases his burden. With renewed resolve, Lorraine steps forward and offers her hand, ready to head to town together. Lorraine explains that entering the city requires passing through the front gate, so they must avoid drawing suspicion. She offers to guide him, insisting on helping despite the problem with the mask. Together they hurry through a stone passage toward the city entrance carved into the mountainside. The coastal town spreads below as they approach the gate, blending into the line of travelers. Checkpoint armed guards stop them and demand to see their identification. At the gate, Rent and Lorraine present their identification cards. However, one guard questions Rent's strange manner of speaking and orders him to remove the mask. Lorraine quickly explains that the mask is cursed and cannot be taken off. Suspicion grows as the guard wonders about their relationship and the truth behind the claim. Rent calmly asks them to try pulling it off, believing only a high-ranking cleric could dispel the curse. The guard attempts to pull off the mask, but it refuses to move. Relief spreads as Rent and Lorraine step through the gate and into the lively streets of the city. He reflects that only a few days have passed since he left, yet returning feels unreal. Memories surface of the many times he believed he would never come back. Gratitude fills him as he looks at Lorraine, knowing her support made this return possible. As he admits reaching town was possible because of her support. At a quiet street, he gently states they should part ways, unwilling to bring her more trouble, insisting that neither of them knows what lies ahead and that he should not decide alone. From a distance, he senses her potential as an adventurer and believes she deserves a bright future. Standing above on a wall, he resolves not to ruin her chance at a normal life. She looks up and promises to repay her debt when he becomes closer to being human again. Without hesitation, he leaps across rooftops, choosing distance over lingering attachment. Below, she runs after him, calling out as his figure grows smaller against the skyline. Beyond city walls, he reflects that leaving so abruptly may have been harsh, yet necessary. Gazing over distant fields, he resolves to avoid causing trouble and believes they will meet again when time is right. Moving through forest path, he admits that although he needs a human ally, secrecy becomes essential, and any helper must gain something in return, while keeping his nature hidden. Trust matters, yet that person should remain unusual and somewhat distant from others. A quiet house appears ahead, fitting for someone who would not be startled by his appearance. After a brief pause at door, he steps inside when invited, prepared to seek cooperation once more. He grips the door firmly, hesitating before entering the quiet house. Inside, a woman senses his unusual presence and studies him calmly. Aware something is different, she allows him time to explain while continuing her research, showing neither fear nor alarm at his appearance. With composed confidence, she introduces herself as Lauren, inviting him to share his situation and purpose. A young woman raises her hand and gathers magic, concentrating her power forward. She releases a destructive blast across the field, striking a distant target and causing a large explosion. After the battle, a tall undead adventurer returns carrying hunted animals, while she finishes preparing a fire for cooking. Later they clean up and share a quiet meal together inside. While eating, she listens calmly as he explains his strange encounter with a dragon. Inside the quiet room, the undead adventurer explains how he was devoured. Across from him, the woman studies his masked face, questioning the dragon he mentioned and the labyrinth tied to its presence. He recalls that when he regained awareness, the dragon's presence had already disappeared, leaving uncertainty behind. Concern rises as he admits fear that the dragon could harm others if it still exists. She agrees to cooperate and help him prepare, before reporting everything to the guild. The woman states that she is a silver-rank adventurer who specializes in monster spells and scholarly research. She proposes a trade and invites him to become her research subject standing firm. The undead adventurer agrees to share information about himself in exchange for her assistance and shelter. With focused interest, she begins asking detailed questions about his skin, flesh sensing her sharp curiosity. He hesitates, realizing he may become an experimental subject under her careful observation. Inside the room, she explains that research on monsters is limited. With calm confidence, she instructs him to continue adventuring and report his progress after each journey. He accepts her conditions, agreeing to assist with daily tasks while providing information for her studies. During their meal, she mentions additional resources that could support their work. Soon after, the undead adventurer departs alone, heading toward the distant hills to continue his growth. Examining his blade, the undead adventurer notices cracks along its edge. Enemies. He understands that evolving further will demand battles fought at full power. Although he feels gratitude toward the sword, he admits it can no longer withstand the force he channels through it. During combat practice, vitality flows from his body into the blade, intensifying each strike. Recognizing the burden of magic and spirit, he concludes that only a rare sacred weapon can endure his growing energy. Walking alone, the undead adventurer reflects that spirit energy may aid his future evolution. He concludes that a new sword must endure his rising physical strength, magic, and spirit. Remembering a skilled blacksmith in Malt's vicinity, he heads toward a shop known as Three-Pronged Harpoon inside the building. A woman in work attire notices his arrival. With calm hospitality, she welcomes him into the forge, marking the start of his search for a stronger weapon. Inside the forge, a heavy hammer crashes down repeatedly, shaping heated metal beneath intense sparks. The master blacksmith works with steady focus, pouring strength into each strike as the blade slowly takes form. Outside, the undead adventurer waits patiently while the sound of metal echoes through the courtyard. Sweat runs down the smith's face as he continues refining the weapon. At last, he steps forward and apologizes for the delay, signaling that the forging is nearly complete. The blacksmith studies the masked adventurer with curiosity, surprised that someone traveled so far to seek his craft. Standing in the courtyard, the undead explains that he has come to request a custom sword. After examining him closely, the smith recognizes that he is a rare full spirit user. Because of prior commitments, the blacksmith admits he cannot begin the work immediately. Even so, trust is established when the adventurer reveals he was referred by someone the smith respects. The blacksmith studies the request carefully and agrees to begin detailed planning for the new weapon. So a temporary sword will be provided until the final blade is complete. Specific adjustments are discussed, and contact details are left to ensure proper coordination. Their agreement is sealed with a firm handshake, confirming trust between craftsman and adventurer. After expressing gratitude, the undead departs alone, while Luca watches quietly, sensing something unusual in his presence. Inside the workshop, the blacksmith studies the request carefully and agrees to begin detailed planning for the new weapon. He explains that forging it will require time, so a temporary sword will be provided until the final blade is complete. Specific adjustments are discussed, and contact details are left to ensure proper coordination. Their agreement is sealed with a firm handshake, confirming trust between craftsman and adventurer. After expressing gratitude, the undead departs alone, while Luca watches quietly. Luca grows uneasy, sensing that something about him felt unusual. The blacksmith considers the situation and suggests that their visitor may have concealed his true identity. Despite the doubt, they acknowledge that he showed no hostility and came only to commission a weapon. Reviewing the address he provided, they confirm it leads to a known residence, easing some suspicion. In the end, the blacksmith concludes that approaching them directly proves a certain level of trust. He watches quietly as the undead adventurer walks away from the city, her concern lingering beyond the gates. He reflects on what truly defines a monster. Inside a dungeon, he observes skeletons attacking humans, and considers whether appearance alone separates monsters from people. When other adventurers fall into danger, he steps forward without hesitation and cuts down the attacking undead. As spirit energy surges through his blade, he realizes that protecting others proves he has not abandoned his humanity. After defeating the undead, the masked adventurer listens as the rescued man expresses gratitude. Turning away, he continues through the corridor, reflecting on his decision to remain human, despite his monstrous form. Suddenly, a large slime drops from above, catching the adventurer off guard and forcing the other man back in fear. Reacting instantly, he draws his blade and slices through the creature before it can attack again. With the threat eliminated, the saved adventurer thanks him repeatedly. Rent hurriedly explains that he is not an adventurer but a restaurant manager who admires strength standing beside his wife in front of their shop. He admits financial trouble and fears losing his position without quick earnings. With determination, he asks to accompany the masked adventurer into the labyrinth to gather valuable resources. He describes an unexplored area he wishes to investigate for confirmation and reporting purposes. After a brief warning about the dangers ahead, the undead adventurer agrees. The restaurant manager eagerly accepts the chance to follow the masked adventurer. As they walk deeper into the corridor, the undead introduces himself as Lento. Unaware this simple exploration will soon grow far more dangerous, Rent walks through the labyrinth of the reflected moon with a guide who questions his presence in such a dangerous place, meant for experienced adventurers. He reveals he has goals, and continues forward, despite the guide's doubts about his strength and survival. They arrive at a hidden chamber deep within the ruins. The guide studies his map and realizes the chamber is unexplored and unrecorded. While the guide considers reporting the discovery, Rent shows no interest. Rent allows the guide to act freely, though he admits his lack of interest in reporting the ruins is not entirely honest. He reflects that mapping the unexplored area would support his goal. While the guide records details, Rent advances and draws monsters toward himself to control the battle. With each enemy defeated, his strength increases through existential evolution. Behind the skull mask, he senses another transformation approaching after countless battles as a ghoul. Rent and the guide reach a vast chamber deep within the labyrinth. This is the room where he once encountered the dragon and lost his human life. They observe the immense space and confirm the dragon is no longer present. For hours they search the area for traces, hoping to uncover clues that might help him regain humanity. Just as they consider leaving, the guide notices a small hidden opening within the rocky wall. Beyond the small opening, a narrow staircase descends into a hidden passage covered in webs and dust. They move carefully through the tight corridor, expecting treasure, but the path ends at a sealed wall. The chamber appears to be a dead end, offering nothing unusual at first glance. On the stone floor, Rent notices a faint magic circle that the guide fails to recognize, realizing humans cannot see the formation beneath his companion's feet. As Loris stands on the unseen circle, the high-tier magic activates beneath his feet. A sudden surge of light pulls him upward, and Rent reaches out as his companion is taken away, leaving Rent alone with the fading glow, realizing it was a teleportation circle. Understanding the danger beyond, he decides not to abandon Loris and steps into the circle himself. Moments later, Loris lies on the ground in another location as Rent arrives to ensure his survival. Rent arrives in a sealed chamber with Loris, quickly realizing escape will not be easy. A massive skeletal arm crashes down, revealing the presence of a powerful enemy within the room. Before them stands a giant skeleton, far larger than any ordinary undead found in the labyrinth. Its size and aura show traits of a high-class monster, not merely an oversized corpse. Facing the towering creature alone, Rent prepares himself for a dangerous battle. Rent accepts that retreat is impossible, and moves to engage the giant skeleton while keeping Loris behind him. The monster swings its massive arm, shattering stone pillars as Rent narrowly avoids the crushing blows. The creature moves with surprising speed, forcing Rent to stay slightly ahead to prevent being overwhelmed angles. But the skeleton withstands the attacks and continues advancing. As a boss monster, it draws energy from the labyrinth itself, making the prolonged battle increasingly dangerous. Rent searches for a weakness and notices it is vulnerable to purification abilities. However, the sword he carries was not forged to channel spirit power, limiting its effectiveness. He decides to pour all his energy into a single strike, knowing the weapon can endure such force only once. Steadying himself, Rent accepts that he will have only one opportunity. With his blade shining brightly, he charges forward and unleashes everything at the giant skeleton. The giant skeleton rushes forward, meeting Rent's charge as both close the distance without hesitation. Its massive arm swings toward him, but he drives ahead, forcing his glowing blade through the monster's guard, tearing through bone as the purification power spreads across the creature's frame. Ignoring the risk to himself, Rent commits fully to the strike, aiming for the core within its chest, shattering the giant skeleton and ending the battle in a burst of debris. Rent continues his assault after the decisive strike, shattering the giant skeleton's body and scattering fragments across the chamber. Without pausing, he crushes the remaining bones, using all his strength until the enemy is completely destroyed. When the battle ends and the remains lie still, he fails to notice that a change has begun within himself. Inside the dungeon, Rent awakened in confusion, realizing his body had become a skeleton. Sweat covered the man's face as he recognized that the giant skeleton was no longer a threat. Across the stone floor, broken bones of the massive enemy scattered in pieces. Kneeling beside him, Rent placed a hand on the wound and activated healing magic. The injury gradually began to close. Once the treatment ended, he pulled back, knowing further recovery required proper medical care. The injured man stared at the hooded skeleton, questioning his identity and abilities. Turning away, Rent avoided giving a clear answer. The man's shock deepened as he struggled to accept what stood before him. Memories surfaced of fighting monsters and protecting others. Power suddenly surged through his body, cracking the dungeon walls around him. Amid the falling debris, he produced a valuable crystal, remembering the true purpose behind the expedition. Rent lifted a large crystal taken from the shattered skeleton. Calmly, Rent assessed its value, recognizing it as a rare magic stone from the defeated giant. He offered the stone to the man, making it clear that compensation was expected. Extending his hand, Rent allowed the man to examine the crystal closely. Later in town, a young woman rushed toward the recovering man, relieved to see him safely returned. In the street, the young woman ran forward and collided with the man, wrapping her arms around him in relief. Clinging tightly, she checked his condition while he assured her he was unharmed. A short distance away, Rent watched quietly as the man explained who had saved him. Without drawing attention, Rent moved through the town alley, unnoticed by most residents. Later, simple food rested on a table, and he focused only on regaining strength. Inside the quiet shop, the couple explained their situation. Regret weighed heavily on the man as his wife listened in silence. Without hesitation, Rent presented the large magic stone and suggested using it to reclaim the store. He revealed that a monster once gave him his current body, which was why he avoided contact with others. Before leaving, Rent requested secrecy and asked Loris to handle guild matters and other tasks in town. At the table, Rent placed the magic stone down and calmly stated his condition, confused that such a simple request followed such a valuable offer. Suddenly, the man slammed his hands on the table, shocked that anyone would trade a treasure for so little. Emotion overcame him as he immediately accepted the arrangement, promising unlimited food in return. Overwhelmed, he wiped away tears while his wife supported him, grateful yet determined to repay the kindness properly. Inside the quiet shop, The couple expressed their gratitude as Rent prepared to leave. Outside, Loris and his wife stood at the entrance and waved while the cloaked figure walked away into the street. Rent reflected that steady work as an adventurer would now be easier without worry. He considered that having people in Lorraine who could be trusted was reward enough. Recalling how he once suspected Loris might have lied about his family and debt, walking alone, Rent reflected that Loris had shown honesty by not stealing the magic stone. A darker thought surfaced as Rent considered how easily betrayal could have justified violence. Suddenly, a strong impulse overwhelmed him, urging him to consume human flesh. He struggled to control the craving, forcing himself to think clearly and seek help instead of surrendering to instinct. Clutching his head, Rent fought back the monstrous hunger, determined not to harm anyone. At night, Rent arrived at Lorraine's quiet house, its windows glowing softly. Seated at her desk, Lorraine examined documents and notes, sensing something unusual about recent events. She reviewed records on existential evolution, focusing on how monsters advance into higher forms. Examples of skeleton soldiers and knights suggested other possible paths. Surrounded by stacks of research, Lorraine admitted that many uncertainties remained about what he might become next. A knock echoed at Lorraine's door, drawing her attention from the shelves of books. From her desk, she allowed the visitor to enter, noting that he had returned later than usual from the labyrinth. Calmly, she asked whether his trip to the labyrinth of the reflected moon had yielded any results. Without warning, Rent stepped behind her and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. Startled, Lorraine froze, as she sensed something was wrong. Lorraine sensed something was wrong and questioned his condition. His grip tightened around her shoulders as he leaned closer, breathing heavily despite lacking life. Rent's thoughts blurred, and he admitted his desire for her. The words slipped out without restraint. Dark veins spread across his body as the hunger intensified, pushing him toward violence. Overcome by instinct, he confessed that what he truly wanted was her flesh, struggling to resist the urge. Lorraine struggled as Rent forced her down, dark hunger overtaking his reason. His control weakened, and his grip grew violent, pinned to the floor. She endured the attack while he bit into her shoulder, losing himself to instinct. Rent, now a skeleton, bites into Lorraine's neck. His fangs pierce her skin as blood begins to flow. He pulls her closer and drinks deeply. Blood spills across the floor while her body weakens in his arms. The taste spreads through him. It fills his dry throat and satisfies a craving he had never known. Lorraine trembles in pain as he continues. His instincts overpower his reason. He struggles to resist the urge to consume her completely. Breathing heavily, blood stains her clothes. Yet her eyes search for Rent. Rent, shaken, forces himself to answer. Though still a skeleton, he struggles to regain control of his hunger. Gathering her remaining strength, Lorraine thrusts out her hand. A powerful blast of magic erupts. The impact sends him crashing across the room. Debris scatters as the force tears through the walls. When the light fades, Lorraine lowers her hand. Exhausted, she kneels amid the destruction. Rent's body is hurled through the air, torn by Lorraine's magic as the blast cuts across the room. Lorraine steadies herself and begins forming a sealing spell. The hunger fades, leaving him aware of what he nearly did. From a distance, Lorraine watches the ruined room. She forces herself to remain calm despite her injuries. In the darkness, her resolve remains firm. Even knowing the risk, she accepts the danger of staying by his side. Smoke drifts around the damaged house as Rent regains consciousness. Inside the room, he awakens in bed, confused and weak. The memory of losing control lingers in his mind. Lorraine watches him carefully, realizing his condition may be changing into something new. Sitting up slowly, Rent notices the pain in his shoulder and struggles to recall his actions, turning away. Lorraine focuses on preparing a potion, choosing not to dwell on what happened while ensuring he recovers safely. Rent reaches toward Lorraine's injured shoulder, determined to make amends for losing control. Carefully, he places his skeletal hand over the wound and begins channeling healing energy into her body. A faint glow spreads across her skin as the injury slowly closes. Relief replaces the tension between them. Lorraine accepts what happened as an accident, choosing not to let it damage their long partnership. Though ashamed of his weakness, Rent feels grateful for her trust. The wound closes completely under Rent's healing. Lorraine confirms the injury has vanished without leaving a scar. She explains that spirit healing was the safest choice and turns her attention back to her desk. After a pause, Lorraine recalls something important and faces him with a serious expression. She asks whether he has noticed any changes occurring within his body since the incident. Standing still, Rent senses a shift deep inside himself. Rent examines his body and discovers patches of new skin forming over his bones. Lorraine recalls that while he was healing her, he mentioned the giant skeleton they fought earlier. she concludes that within only a few hours, something triggered his evolution from ghoul to a higher state. Holding several books, Lorraine calmly explains that he must have fulfilled a hidden condition. With a steady gaze, she reminds him that consuming her flesh may have caused this transformation. Lorraine opens an old record and compares Rent to a rare monster mentioned in a past quest. After studying the details, she concludes that his current state resembles a zombie connected to the vampire lineage. She explains that creatures of this family create bonds through blood and grow stronger by sharing it. Unlike humans who are forcibly turned, Rent changed under unusual circumstances. Reasons that this bond triggered his evolution into a higher undead form, likely influenced by human blood acting as a mediator in the vampire lineage. Though she claims to understand part of the mystery, her attention shifts to a more immediate concern unfolding before them. Rent recalls that his mask broke during the battle with the giant skeleton. Suddenly notices the change and tries to warn him as the mask begins restoring itself. Before either can react further, the fractured mask starts moving on its own. Rent stood before Lorraine as the mask on his face shifted. Its jaw trembled, exposing bone beneath the surface. The lower jaw stretched and shifted again. The motion seemed deliberate, not random. Lorraine studied the mask carefully. She concluded the movement was intentional rather than a curse. She questioned him about the change. The mask did not feel alive, yet it reacted. He reflected on his thoughts. He realized the mask responded to his consciousness. The skull's jaw shifted in stages, sliding and grinding as if guided by thought. Lorraine observed closely and considered the possibility of an intention-based artifact rather than a simple curse. Within the study room, she explained that certain magical tools choose and respond to their wielders. Rent recalled that Rena had purchased the mask cheaply from the labyrinth, likely aware of its curse. That theory could explain Rent's earlier mental instability. Close observation led to a theory that a monster's evolution responds to inner desire. Hunger for flesh, combined with influence from the mask, likely pushed skeletal form toward transformation. Uncertainty remained, as existential growth still holds many mysteries. Excitement replaced caution at the discovery of such a rare specimen. Pain lingered in shoulder and doubt surfaced about becoming an experiment. Experimentation began in a room filled with books and tools. Mask revealed 3 general forms: full coverage, upper half, and lower half. Testing moved to bodily changes. Hunger and thirst no longer overwhelmed him, yet sensitivity to blood increased sharply. Results showed potions and medicine remained effective, while poison had no effect at all. Only a small amount of blood was required to ease craving. Research continued for several days, paused only by moments of restraint. Data from experiments had been organized and reviewed carefully. Plans to begin formal thinking based on results were announced. Question arose about his next move. Decision formed to visit a shop and inspect his sword. Consideration followed about accepting a request from guild. Concern emerged that appearance would attract attention. Confidence remained that body had reached point close to human. Warning came that going under his former name would stand out. Discussion turned to his history in Malt. Frequent visits through West Gate made his presence familiar to some. Among townspeople, he appeared no more than a weak bronze adventurer. Past achievements were recalled, including rare decision to quit adventuring and recommendation for guild work. Lack of self-awareness became clear, showing his true face would draw attention. Understanding settled in quietly. A new identity, Lento, would move forward carefully. City rooftops stretched beneath quiet sky as he considered his new path. Cloaked figure walked familiar streets, feeling nostalgia despite little time having passed. Explanation followed that adventurer licenses organize work rather than confirm identity. Guildhall welcomed newcomers without suspicion. Multiple registrations were not illegal, only uncommon. Form was signed carefully. Name Lento marked beginning of another life. Registration halted when family name was requested. Records showed another adventurer with identical name had recently disappeared, causing tension at desk. Confusion forced him to invent surname on spot while avoiding mention of Lorraine. Attention shifted away from dangerous topic before deeper inquiry continued. Explanation followed, about facial injury and herbs growing in restricted area. Readiness to become adventurer again was declared despite ever-present danger. Clerk admitted situation felt unfortunate, yet decision stood. Recognition of his return carried quiet sadness. Iron class license was handed over, granting permission to accept requests within Malt, starting that day. Before he left, concern surfaced from behind counter. Reminder was given not to overexert himself, despite renewed status. Warning followed that danger remains constant, and life cannot be replaced. Cloaked figure departed Guildhall, carrying both license and her words into uncertain future. Headed toward Clove's shop, wondering how reunion would unfold. Armored Knight stopped, noticing bandaged skull beneath hood and asking about injury. Brief exchange confirmed neither was harmed. Recognition followed. That knight stood in unusual place for someone of such rank. Suspicion arose regarding his appearance, yet acknowledgement came calmly. Inquiry centered on missing girl named Rina. Tension settled between them as answer remained uncertain. In the city streets, a knight searches for a young girl named Rina. The undead figure watches him quietly, showing neither fear nor surprise. Standing tall, the knight introduces himself as Idris Log of the Niralan Kingdom's First Order. Recognition crosses the undead's mind, aware that the First Order serves only nobles and chosen elites. Suspicion deepens as the knight questions the reason such a being would search for Rina. He explains that delicate circumstances surround her situation and asks that certain details remain unspoken. Information reached him that she became an adventurer before suddenly fleeing. Rina is the name he presents, hoping the hooded figure recalls it. The undead confirms the search concerns Rina Log, listening as the knight affirms it. After brief thought, the undead states he knows a girl called Rina Lupaj, but claims no knowledge of Rina Log. Idris observes that the hooded figure is treated cautiously by the town's guilds and taverns, as he is only on temporary leave from the knight's order while gathering information. Before parting, he requests to be contacted if Rina is seen, then takes his leave of the streets. Left alone, the undead reflects on Rina Lupaj, recalling her manner and presence. As Idris walks away in silence, the weight of suspicion lingers between them. A craftsman examines a damaged sword with narrowed eyes, studies it closely and realizes the weapon holds traces of spirit energy once used in battle. He recalls the labyrinth of the Reflect Moon and wonders what kind of enemy required it. The hooded undead admits he had no choice but to fight a giant skeleton deep inside. Although doubtful, the craftsman notes that the undead is not skilled at deception and quietly accepts the explanation. Craftsman reacts with surprise upon hearing that the battle took place in an unexplored region. He explains that the sword will require more time to repair, due to spirit damage, and prepares a replacement. Serious now, he describes how boss-class monsters like giant skeletons create barriers to prevent escape. Undead admits there were 2 transfer gates and insists on going back to break them. Far below the labyrinth, the existence of 2 transfer gates becomes the true objective. Within the labyrinth, the hooded undead stands beneath falling particles. He observes the empty chamber and notes the giant skeleton is gone, leaving the space unusually quiet. Remembering that the rear transfer gate allowed Loris to escape, he turns his focus to the gate positioned in front, but now he intends to understand the dungeon's structure and hidden risks. Thinking of the danger to future adventurers, he steps onto the transfer gate, determined to deal with it properly. After activating the transfer gate, the undead arrives before a sealed stone structure hidden deep within the labyrinth. Inside, he steps into a dusty chamber filled with cobwebs, scattered furniture. The sight of the room makes him question whether someone once lived there. Shelves of old books and a heavy desk suggest this place once served as a study or private quarters. As he examines the space further, a sudden presence addresses him, breaking the silence. Inside the hidden chamber, a powerful force suddenly targets the undead, attempting to erase his presence the moment he is discovered. The attack strikes directly, engulfing his skeletal body in violent energy as he endures the assault without retreat. A violent surge of flame rushes through the dungeon corridor. The woman extends her arm and releases magic to counter the attack. From above, the dragon's breath descends like a blazing column. Its overwhelming magical force tears through the narrow passage. The fiery blast collides with her barrier and scatters debris in every direction. Stone surfaces crack under the pressure. Swirling energy gathers tightly around her body as she reinforces her protection. The barrier thickens, yet the advancing breath steadily erodes it. Fractures spread across the weakened defense, encircled by burning force. As the flames fade, she notices a figure still standing within the smoke. A skeletal face emerges from the scorched corridor, reaching a hand toward her. Burned clothing falls away from his body, revealing exposed bone and damaged flesh. Despite the destruction, he remains steady on his feet. Suspended above a glowing magic circle, he recalls how he arrived in this hidden place. Her hand tightens slightly as the realization deepens. The teleportation circle explains his presence, and the seal responds only to monsters. Her expression remains controlled as she confronts the undead adventurer who survived the dragon's overwhelming power. A close look at her eye reveals sharp awareness. Across from her, the skeletal adventurer studies her carefully. She lowers her gaze and acknowledges the mistake. From above, a cloak drops toward him as repayment for what was lost in the flames. Distance remains between them as she evaluates how he arrived. The barrier should have prevented ordinary entry. The magical light fades, returning the chamber to normal. Sitting against the wall, he recognizes the importance of the location and requests that its existence remain undisclosed. Thoughtful consideration follows. He reflects on the guild and the magic stone linked to this place, weighing whether to keep the secret or reveal everything. She steps closer to the seated undead adventurer and extends her hand. He remains still, aware that he cannot resist her if she chooses to attack. Walking across the magic circle, she explains the situation through her composed posture. Adventurers continue seeking achievements, and she understands he cannot return without results. At the forest's edge, the undead adventurer prepares to fulfill his quest. Beneath a dark cloak, his skeletal face remains calm as he grips his sword. Deep among the trees, a giant orc stands in his way. Possessing the head of a pig and an enormous body, the creature towers over him. Without warning, the orc releases a fierce roar and charges. Its weapon slams into the ground, breaking stone and soil. Another powerful swing cuts through the air with force. Lowering his body, he avoids the strike and circles behind the monster. Taking advantage of that brief opening, the adventurer leaps upward. From above, he thrusts his blade downward toward the orc. The orc collapses as blood pours from its body. The undead adventurer lands steadily and watches until the creature stops moving. After the battle, he reflects on his task. Originally, the quest involved delivery work, but now it requires external hunting. He begins cutting the orc's flesh carefully. Though thick with muscle, much of its structure was sustained by magic. Experience has taught him that forest orcs move in groups. Fighting several at once greatly increases the danger, so caution remains necessary. Examining the remains, he notes that those from the labyrinth differ from ordinary forest dwellers. With the orc defeated, the undead adventurer considers the reward. Few quests offer profit like this one, especially when handled alone, recognizing their value for preserving food. He gathers them and sets some aside in gratitude for past assistance. He organizes the harvested meat into tight bundles. After inspecting the amount, he decides the collection is sufficient for now. Sitting down, he opens his tool bag. Magic expands its inner space, allowing him to store far more than its size suggests. Although high-capacity bags are expensive, his old one still holds a fair amount. Carefully, he packs everything before moving on. The undead adventurer recalls learning about space expansion magic from a knowledgeable mage. As he moves through the forest labyrinth, he reflects on its nature. Labyrinths are considered extensions of advanced magical techniques. Observing the shifting scenery and absorbed remains of fallen monsters, he recognizes that the labyrinth sustains itself. Leaning against a tree, he counts his progress. The current quest requires 3 targets, and he has defeated one so far. Soon, 2 more orcs appear nearby. Remaining calm, he prepares to continue, confident that steady effort will see the mission through. 2 massive orcs block the path, gripping heavy logs as weapons. They advance together, attempting to crush the lone undead adventurer between them. One orc swings its log with force, aiming to pin him down. The attack tears through the ground, but he narrowly avoids being trapped. Using their momentum against them, he shifts positions and strikes from above. One creature falls forward, thrown off balance as the blade descends with precision. Before the second can react, he drives his sword deep into its neck. The cut is clean and direct, ending its resistance instantly. With both enemies collapsing, he stands among their bodies. After securing the area, the undead adventurer opens a map he received earlier. With spare time available, he studies it and confirms a safe route back through the rocky terrain. Inside the labyrinth, wide passages stretch across the lower floor. Such open spaces make it easier for groups of monsters to surround careless travelers. Remaining cautious, he reminds himself that moving alone demands constant awareness. Ahead, a young party consisting of a swordsman and a healer battles an orc. Their movements appear inexperienced despite their determination. Watching from a distance, he hesitates. Helping novice adventurers can create further complications, so he considers observing a little longer before acting. A large magic sphere forms in front of the young healer as she releases her spell with effort. At the same moment, the swordsman leaps forward to strike an orc. Watching from behind cover, the undead adventurer prepares to intervene if necessary. However, he soon realizes the pair are coordinating their actions effectively. The healer's magic surges across the ground in a wide arc. The sweeping force tears through the area and drives the enemy back. Shockwave passes the swordsman and disperses into the distance. Though surprised by its strength, the party remains standing, and the battle turns in their favor. Inside a quiet room, the undead adventurer meets a young woman. She listens closely as he explains his identity and recent activities. She remarks that hunting orcs alone shows significant growth. In the past, he would have fled from such encounters, unable to grow stronger despite training memories. Surface of earlier days when even a single orc forced him to retreat. Back then, improvement felt impossible no matter the effort. Now, however, he senses greater potential within his current body. Securing money and testing the map were steps toward larger goals. Determination fills his hollow gaze as he reflects on his desire to accumulate achievements and move closer to his ambitions. At the guild hall, the undead adventurer learns that his orc meat delivery quest has been officially recognized as complete. Guild staff review his performance with clear interest. Hunting orcs alone is rare for someone at his rank, and his strength exceeds normal expectations. Given the town's constant need for capable adventurers, the guild acknowledges his ability to take on greater responsibility in future tasks. Soon after, an official document is presented to him. He is formally approved to participate in the Bronze Class Promotion Examination. Inside the Grand Guild Hall, an announcement declares that the promotion exam has 2 stages. Knowledge is measured through written or oral responses to ensure each adventurer meets the minimum standard beneath his cloak. Rent considers the challenge of the practical exam. Experience offers little comfort, since the next stage demands more than preparation. By the following day, those who succeeded gather once more. A group of capable and determined individuals stands together, ready to face the next evaluation. A guild representative checks the room and confirms that everyone present has passed the written portion, signaling the start of the practical examination. The guild official begins explaining the practical exam. Several examinees must cooperate and reach a designated point inside the labyrinth of the new moon. Preparation starts as names are called. Party members are decided by lottery, forcing unfamiliar adventurers to work together. Rent reflects that this test differs each time. Previously, the task involved gathering a rare medicinal herb. Now, it will be a group battle. Selected names are announced, including Rent's alias. The format clearly separates this trial from solo activities. 3 adventurers stand ready, instructed to form a team of 3 and begin the challenge together. Rent studies his assigned teammates and recognizes them from a previous encounter. The young swordsman stands ready with confidence, while the mage prepares her staff behind him. Stepping forward, Rent considers his limits. His abilities are restricted to strengthening his body and reinforcing defense. The swordsman explains his fighting style, focusing on blade techniques supported by vitality enhancement to maintain endurance during prolonged fights. Beside him, the mage confirms her role as support. Healing magic and rear guard assistance will balance the team's formation. With introductions complete, the 3 acknowledge one another and prepare to begin the examination together. The guild official reveals an additional rule. Although the objective is to reach the designated point, the exam is also a competition. She further announces that no specific restrictions apply. Any method may be used to achieve victory, increasing the tension among the examinees. With the signal to begin, the candidates depart toward the labyrinth of the new moon. Determination spreads across every team. During the journey, the swordsman and mage quietly observe Rent's masked appearance. Doubt lingers. Yet they continue forward together, despite unease. They accept that cooperation is necessary. Trust becomes their only option as they head toward the labyrinth's entrance. The team arrives at the labyrinth of the new moon, facing a wide cave entrance carved into rock. The path ahead looks narrow and uneven, leading into darkness. A large crowd of examinees gathers outside. Stalls line the area, selling equipment and supplies. Rent calls his teammates aside and suggests purchasing a map before entering. Though surprised, they follow his advice and obtain one from a vendor. Upon inspection, they notice the publication date is 15 years old. Small writing is printed along the edge, raising doubts about its accuracy. Realizing the map may be unreliable, they question the guild's intentions, but decide to proceed cautiously toward the labyrinth. He decides to buy another map despite already having one. He suspects other skilled groups have noticed the same flaw in the outdated copy, sold openly at the stalls. Pointing toward a distant figure, he identifies a cloaked man standing apart from the crowd. Approaching calmly, Rent requests a map. The stranger studies him closely, noticing details others might overlook. The cloaked seller drops his pretense and hints that valuable information comes at a price. He suggests that understanding worth depends on one's judgment. After brief negotiation, the man offers a first-floor map for 5 copper coins each, leaving Rent to decide whether the cost is justified. Rent receives the secret map. The cloaked seller advises him not to reveal the deal and hints that his team may succeed. Comparing both maps, the group notices clear differences in layout and detail. The newly purchased version appears more precise than the outdated copy from the guild. Rent explains that authentic maps usually carry a maker's mark. The absence of a brand creates uncertainty about accuracy. He reasons that true mapmakers avoid direct sales to prevent theft and forgery, distributing their work through safer channels. Understanding the situation, the team decides to move forward, trusting their judgment as they enter the labyrinth. Inside the labyrinth of the new moon, the team confirms their destination lies on the first floor. Monsters roam in groups, filling the broad passages that twist like a maze. The design reflects the dungeon's dangerous nature. When battle begins, Ray's charges at the front and strikes first. Behind him, Laura remains steady, casting support magic from a safe distance, positioned between them. Rent guards Laura, while reinforcing their defense. He understands that longer spells leave her exposed. Following their planned formation, they coordinate carefully, overwhelming the monsters and clearing the path forward. As they advance deeper, their coordination improves, and they gain more time to explore. In every clash, each member focuses strictly on their assigned role, maintaining formation. Suddenly, a large wave of skeletons surrounds them. The sheer number of enemies forces Reyes to brace himself under pressure. Reacting quickly, Rent orders them to scatter the horde and clear an escape route. He cuts through the front line while Laura supports from behind. After intense fighting, the monsters retreat. Exhausted, the team realizes the attack was unusually massive. They discover the cause is incense burning nearby, a substance that attracts monsters. Understanding this, they grasp the true difficulty of the exam. Rent warns his teammates that the exam is designed to test more than strength. He explains that some participants may set traps or attempt to eliminate rivals. He continues, stating that many adventurers with the same goal will create obstacles for others, stresses that ignoring this possibility could cost them their lives. His tone grows serious as he senses something unusual nearby. Pausing, he notices the absence of monsters and feels a different presence within the maze. Like Corridor, confirming his suspicion, Rent identifies the presence not as creatures of the dungeon, but as humans waiting in the shadows. Inside the dungeon, a hooded skeleton faces two young adventurers. His hollow gaze rests on them as he recalls the human's earlier words from the dark corridor ahead. Signs of approaching enemies become clear. The skeleton senses their movement first. According to his explanation, a strange presence once controlled this area. Now, that influence no longer affects the surroundings. Suspicion grows that someone has targeted them for a long time. A possible plan forms to reduce the number of opponents before direct confrontation. With danger near, the undead steps ahead and signals readiness. The three prepare themselves to face whoever advances toward them. Sweat forms on their faces as they understand the danger ahead. Fear is visible, yet neither steps back. Both adventurers steady themselves and grip their weapons. Determination replaces hesitation as they prepare to follow the undead's lead deeper into the cave. The skeleton entrusts one opponent to them before moving forward alone. Suddenly, a large man attacks from above. With force, more enemies reveal themselves from the shadows. Observing their movements, the skeleton confirms that multiple attackers are targeting them inside the tunnel. Reacting instantly, the undead leaps through the air and closes the gap, pressing the assault without hesitation. Steel clashes in the narrow tunnel as the undead blocks a heavy strike and forces his opponent back. From above and ahead, more attacks rain down. The undead dashes across the wall, avoiding incoming blows. Stones scatter as the battlefield widens. A burst of light erupts from her magic, surging forward in a wide arc. The skeleton advances at the same moment, striking another foe and breaking their formation. Two enemies collapse, subdued by the coordinated assault. The undead stands firm while the boy steadies his breathing nearby. Sensing movement deeper within the cave, the skeleton turns toward the darkness. One final presence waits beyond the wall. A bald swordsman charges forward and swings with full force. The young adventurer raises his blade to block, but the impact drives him backward. Behind him, the girl steadies her staff while light gathers around its tip. The boy tightens his grip and regains his footing, forcing the enemy's sword aside. The attacker presses harder, striking repeatedly. Each blow pushes the young adventurer closer to the wall, straining his defense. At that moment, a surge of magic erupts from the girl, shattering the rocky surface. Seizing the opening, the boy steps in and counters at close range, driving his opponent back through the falling debris. Huge chunks of rock crash down as the enemy loses balance. The young adventurer steps back while debris buries the attacker beneath the collapsing stones. Silence returns to the tunnel. The boy exhales heavily, checking his condition. The defeated men are bound tightly with rope and forced to kneel. Their resistance ends as the group secures them. Concern briefly rises about possible revenge. However, the young pair conclude that the attackers brought this outcome upon themselves. With the enemies restrained, the skeleton decides to move forward. The three leave the captives behind and continue deeper into the dungeon passage. After leaving the restrained attackers behind, the trio advances through the cavern. No other adventurers appear along the way. With a reliable map in hand, they avoid getting lost despite the vast and confusing layout of the labyrinth. Eventually, they reach a wider chamber and stop. Standing side by side, they sense a change in the atmosphere ahead. A massive doorway comes into view at the far end of the cavern. The air grows heavy as they recognize it as the destination they were seeking. Understanding the situation, the group realizes they have arrived at what appears to be a boss chamber. Massive door stands before them, and they realize it may hide one of several bosses rumored to exist on the first floor. The chamber remains silent as they assess the risk. The trio reflects on their limited experience against such foes. They understand this encounter will test their true ability and expose any weakness. Retreat remains an option, yet returning later might not be possible. Accepting the danger, they resolve to face whatever waits beyond the door. Suddenly, another group of adventurers appears from the shadows. Their mocking expressions suggest hostility rather than cooperation. Newcomers approach boldly and attempt to provoke them, hinting at an alliance while showing clear disrespect. Without warning, the skeleton warrior drives his fist into a man's face inside the corridor. The sudden blow halts the man's movement instantly. Despite the injury, the man forces himself to appear steady. Sweat runs down his face while he tries to maintain control. Deep within the dungeon, creatures lurk among the shadows. The party advances cautiously, keeping their objective in mind as tension builds around them. Gradually, the young adventurer understands that reaching this path confirms their arrival. Realization sharpens his focus as the meaning becomes clear. From the darkness, other adventurers reveal themselves with similar intentions. Seeing no other choice, the skeleton prepares to engage in battle. The skeleton stands with his companions, observing another group ahead. The young adventurer grips his weapon, tension clear in his posture. Suddenly, a circular trap activates beneath the other group. The ground opens with force, pulling everything downward in an instant. Several adventurers struggle as they lose footing and fall into the dark shaft. Their attempts to resist fail as gravity drags them into the depths below. Silence returns to the corridor. The fallen group does not reappear. The skeleton notes their quick defeat and considers the implications. Regardless of what just happened, the conditions of the exam remain unchanged as they prepare to move forward. The skeleton leaves the final decision to his companions. The young adventurer listens carefully, aware that the outcome will depend on their judgment. Ahead of them, a large door stands sealed inside the dungeon. Instead of forcing a fight like the others did, beyond, the entrance lies a vast underground chamber filled with flowing water and stone walls. Moonlight shines through a barrier visible to the naked eye, confirming the area is isolated. Suddenly, a massive slime with a single eye emerges from the liquid surface. Recognizing it as the boss, the skeleton calmly orders distance as the battle is about to begin. The skeleton studies the giant slime and notices the core at its center. Its size is far larger than expected, making a direct attack ineffective. Along the walls, circular holes begin to open. The young adventurer reacts in alarm while liquid starts to pour out steadily from the openings. Streams of slime shoot across the chamber from multiple directions. The flowing substance converges toward the main body. Creature's eye shifts within the swelling form. Its body churns violently as the surrounding liquid gathers around it. Under the moonlit barrier, the enormous slime expands and crashes forward, its reinforced body pressing across the chamber as the battle intensifies. The massive slime looms before them, its swollen body pressing forward as the group braces for impact. Under the moonlit sky inside a vast cavern, a massive sphere of slime spreads across the ground. Rent, in his skeletal form, watches carefully beside two adventurers. Their expressions tighten as they sense the creature gathering power within its transparent body. The slime suddenly expands, releasing a violent surge of force. The ground cracks, and fragments scatter, as the core shifts rapidly inside the swelling mass. Acid bullets fire outward in relentless streams, melting stone and forcing the group to endure the barrage. Realizing defense is useless, they prepare to strike the core directly and end the attack. The young swordsman charges forward and swings with full strength, leaping high before driving his blade down into the giant slime. A powerful wave bursts outward from the monster's body, sweeping across the cavern floor. The swordsman is thrown back as the slime spreads further, its mass rippling violently. Rent studies the creature's dark core floating deep inside the thick body. The slime tightens around it, preventing any direct strike from reaching the center. Calmly assessing the situation, Rent notes that the creature is forcing them into constant defense while testing their coordination. Turning to the mage, he signals that only sustained heat can melt a path to the core. The young mage admits her weakness in precise incantations, explaining that she can only convert gathered magic into raw flames over time. Swordsman immediately takes command of the front line, ordering protection for her while calculating how long the slime will need to recover around its core. With determination, he dashes across the cavern, drawing the creature's attention. The slime bends and surges after him, its massive body crashing through stone. As debris falls, the mage steps forward and releases accumulated heat. Blazing energy strikes the slime's surface. Seizing the moment, she drives her staff into the ground, unleashing a concentrated burst that shakes the cavern floor. The mage raises her staff and gathers the surrounding magic, focusing her will on shaping it into fire. Light intensifies while she steadies her breathing, committing fully to the spell. Heat builds in the air, forcing her allies to shield themselves from the rising temperature. Rent watches closely as flames condense into a brilliant sphere above the staff. The slime shifts uneasily, its core flickering within the thick body. With complete resolve, she releases the accumulated power in a massive blaze that engulfs the monster's surface. Fire tears through the viscous mass, exposing the dark core as the creature's body begins to collapse. The swordsman leaps high and drives his blade downward toward the exposed core. Melted slime splashes aside as his strike pierces through the weakened mass. A final surge erupts upward, but the creature's body can no longer hold its shape across the cavern floor. Scattered pools of liquid mark where the monster once stood. The three adventurers stand apart, realizing the battle has ended. Other guild members rush in from hiding, drawn by the aftermath of the fight. The young swordsman begins to understand the significance of defeating the boss. With danger gone, they start gathering the remaining materials, preparing to claim their reward. The young swordsman stares at the rising smoke, realizing other adventurers may soon pass them and claim the advantage. Rent studies the thick haze spreading through the chamber and identifies it as a trap. He recalls that such devices are often placed near key objectives. At his signal, the mage raises her staff and summons a strong current of wind. The breeze pushes the smoke away, clearing their path forward, with visibility restored. The group advances through the corridor, moving carefully along the stone passage. They discover unconscious adventurers ahead and determine the gas was meant to block progress, confirming they have reached the true route deeper inside. Group steps into a stone chamber marked as a checkpoint, where a guild official waits behind a desk beneath the dungeon's dim light. The official confirms they are the first to arrive and presents a proof badge, instructing them to keep it safe as evidence of their progress. He then reveals a small gift prepared for 3 people, including restorative potions and special holders meant to aid new adventurers. Mage listens closely as he explains that reaching the destination first determines the outcome of the test. With the reward handed over, the official reminds them to report back to the guild once their task is fully completed. Standing before the guild staff, the trio listens quietly to a final warning not to lower their guard on the return trip. Collapsed stone and empty passages suggest how dangerous the trial had been. Few, if any, could have cleared every obstacle without careful teamwork. Outside the dungeon, city walls rise into view. Exhaustion shows as they sit on the ground, hoping the ordeal has truly ended. Thoughts linger about hidden traps and unseen manipulation behind the entire test. Suspicion grows that someone observed their actions from start to finish. On the road back, realization settles in that even their escort may have been part of the examination. Inside Guild Hall, an official announces that real examination has concluded. Formal thanks are offered as proof of completion is handed over. Surprise spreads among the 3 adventurers as realization sets in that they have advanced in rank. Relief mixes with confusion while they try to understand outcome. From the shadows, a hooded figure steps forward and submits a written report. Shock follows when they learn he had observed them throughout entire trial. Calm explanation reveals purpose of hidden supervision. Their decisions, restraint, and teamwork had been measured from beginning to end. After review, confirmation is given that promotion stands, provided their conduct remains honorable from this point onward. Excitement bursts from the 2 young adventurers as confirmation of their success echoes through the hall. Applause spreads among guild members, and formal congratulations are offered. Smiles appear as their effort is publicly recognized. Standing before the officials, they bow in gratitude, while the hooded mentor watches quietly from nearby. Copper plaques are presented as proof of their new rank, with instructions to return later, for engraved versions bearing protective enchantments. Gratitude fills the moment, and acknowledgement is given to the one who guided them, marking the true beginning of their journey as adventurers. With bright determination, the young mage speaks of future goals and promises to meet again as fellow adventurers striving toward the same dream. Gratitude is expressed sincerely by the skeletal mentor, who resolves to remember this day and wishes them strength in the trials ahead. Side by side, the 2 newly promoted adventurers walk forward, carrying weapons on their backs and confidence in their steps. Watching from behind, their mentor reflects quietly that both will grow into capable figures within the guild. Later, a superior questions him about the second promotion exam, acknowledging that pairing him with those two had been a wise decision. Report states that one participant displayed exceptional knowledge of the true maze. Guild staff connect those findings to the hooded undead adventurer, requesting further discussion. Attention shifts toward his background, suggesting deeper matters remain unresolved within the guild. In a quiet room, Lento sat across from Lorraine at a wooden table. His hood cast a shadow over his skeletal face. She watched him carefully, aware of the risk of meeting in private. Lorraine studied him with a serious expression. Lento lowered his gaze, his undead form exposed beneath the cloak. The difference between them was clear. She questioned his actions and his decision to continue as he was. The tension between duty and loyalty grew heavier. Lento reflected on their long connection and the trust built over time. Both understood the consequences. If discovered, the guild would act and the town would not forgive them. He admitted that discovery would lead to expulsion or punishment. As an undead, he knew the guild could never allow a monster to move freely. Across the table, Sheila revealed that she had not reported him to the guild. Her decision carried risk, yet she remained calm. She reminded him that the guild had issued no ruling about his registration. Loyalty to guild rules weighed heavily on her conscience. Acknowledged that staff must report everything and keep guild secrets. Promotion and trust depended on strict obedience. Despite that, Sheila chose silence, unwilling to harm the one who had supported the guild for so long. Sheila explained that her silence was deliberate. Reporting him would bring no benefit to her. Yet she had still chosen to protect him. Lento realized her decision carried personal risk. He reflected on her consideration and understood he needed to respond sincerely. For him, the matter could not remain unresolved. As a guild employee, Sheila acknowledged her duty and responsibility. Despite understanding the danger, she prepared a solution to uphold both her role and their bond. She placed a document on the table. The parchment bore intricate markings that signified binding power. It was a magic contract, a formal agreement capable of enforcing penalties if its terms were broken. Sheila pricked her finger and pressed her blood onto the parchment. The contract reacted immediately, recognizing her pledge. Lento watched as the seal took effect. Upon reading the penalty clause, he froze. The terms stated that if he failed to honor the agreement, she would resign from the guild and submit to enslavement under his name. Disturbed by the severity, he questioned her reasoning. Such a punishment seemed excessive. Calmly, she asked him to adjust the clauses if he wished. Harm would not come to her if he kept his word. In the end, she placed her trust in him, not as a guild officer, but as another human being. After hearing her resolve, Lento accepted the terms. The weight between them eased, and he decided to reveal the full truth behind his condition. Outside, the guild building stood beneath an open sky. His promise marked the beginning of a confession long delayed. Far from the town, dense forests and quiet streams surrounded a secluded path. Memories of his past struggles resurfaced as he prepared to explain everything. Hidden within the woods stood a modest house, isolated from prying eyes. It was a place tied closely to his survival. Inside, Lorraine worked calmly at her desk when a knock sounded at the door. Lorraine opened the door and found Lento standing there with Sheila beside him. The visit surprised her, and she immediately sensed the seriousness of their arrival. After inviting them inside, she studied their expressions and questioned the reason for bringing a guild officer to her home. Sheila explained that she had learned certain details about Lento, and mentioned the existence of a magic contract. Lorraine examined the document carefully. Recognizing the contract's high grade, she understood the extent of Sheila's resolve. Lento remained firm, ready to speak openly. With the truth laid bare, Lorraine asked how much had been revealed about Lento's transformation into a monster. Lorraine reviewed the contract and stated that she already understood how Lento's new name had come into existence. Standing near the forest outside, she pointed out that even if Sheila had official business, bringing a guild matter to this remote house showed unusual judgment. She observed that Lento had not changed in character, yet choosing to travel with a being labeled a monster revealed a lack of caution. Seated at her desk, Lorraine mentioned the rumors that called her a witch, and noted how suspicion already surrounded her. With a controlled gesture, she warned that reckless involvement could cost someone more than reputation. An awkward movement sent a paper slipping from the desk. Sheila hurried to retrieve it, unaware of sudden tension in the room. In an instant, a fork shot forward with sharp force, striking near her hand before she could react. Speed and precision revealed hidden capability. Shock spread across her face as she froze. Realizing how easily she could have been harmed, fear tightened her expression. Calm laughter followed, dismissing the act as a joke. Still, warning remained clear that a true witch could have ended her life without effort. Kneeling close, she heard firm clarification that this undead sought neither blood nor flesh, proving restraint despite monstrous form. A sharp gaze questioned whether she truly understood consequences of her choice. Pressure in room deepened under that stare. Hands seized her collar and pulled her closer. Surprise silenced her for a moment, yet she did not resist. Accusation followed, reminding her that signing contract meant accepting its weight. Option to destroy agreement was offered without hesitation. Voice trembled before rising with resolve. She declared clear understanding and refused to withdraw. Head lowered as emotions surfaced. Fear had existed, yet stronger feeling was frustration that he carried burden alone, and that turmoil hurt more than danger itself. Gratitude filled her voice as she admitted that becoming a full guild member had been possible because of his support. That desire to repay him had never faded. Clutching a fork against her chest, she insisted that hearing his past had not changed her resolve. Silence settled over the room while confession lingered. Unease crossed Lorraine's face as she measured those feelings carefully. Decision came at last. Staying here was declared safer, since only a witch and a monster lived in this secluded place. Apology softened tone before mood shifted. Invitation followed, offering a simple meal together, despite lingering tension. Night settled over the forest as gratitude was expressed, marking a fragile but hopeful step forward together. Inside the house, two women sit at a wooden table while Rent stands behind them in a cloak and skull mask. Close views of the plates reveal detailed cooking and balanced portions. Each dish appears thoughtfully arranged, reflecting his steady effort in the kitchen. Discussion turns toward his role within the home. Household tasks such as cleaning, laundry, and cooking are handled by him, creating a comfortable and well-managed environment. Consideration of fair compensation arises as his contributions become undeniable. Appreciation for his consistent work grows stronger. Lifting part of the mask, he exposes his undead features. Even so, discipline allows him to survive on minimal blood while remaining composed. Seated at the table, Sheila speaks seriously about keeping Rent's true nature hidden from the guild. Attention shifts to a young man connected to her past. His recent work has ended, and he is preparing to travel to the capital. Concerns about safety and responsibility quietly surface. With calm reasoning, Sheila explains that if trust exists between them, it should extend to him as well. Gratitude softens the mood, appreciation is shown, and the tension eases slightly as understanding grows. Later, Rent reveals part of his undead face while discussing recent events. Reports of guild staff deaths raise concern. News spreads that several adventurers have recently gone missing because of this. The guild and veteran members begin searching for a possible culprit. An explanation emerges about how the maze functions. When someone dies inside, the body and belongings are absorbed, leaving little behind. Concern deepens when it is revealed that no equipment or magical residue was found. Such absence feels unnatural, especially since protective charms usually leave evidence. Rent listens carefully and suggests avoiding the maze for a time. The situation appears unstable, and caution seems necessary. Attention turns toward him. A masked newcomer who defeated orcs easily could invite suspicion, especially given his unusual presence. Inside the house, Sheila informs Rent that a letter from Luca has arrived, and that the item he requested is finished. Without hesitation, he decides to retrieve it. Calm resolve shows beneath his skull mask as he prepares to leave. Soon after, he walks through the city streets toward a workshop. Tall stone buildings and quiet paths frame his steady approach. At the entrance, a craftsman notices his arrival. The meeting appears expected, and the atmosphere remains formal. Within the workshop, a newly completed spear-like weapon is presented. Considerable time and effort were invested in its creation. The craftsman reveals the completed weapon, a massive new sword designed to meet Rent's needs. Its broad blade and solid frame show careful construction and rare materials. Rent grips the weapon and tests its weight. The blade is forged to endure magic, vitality, and spiritual force. Although the materials exceeded the planned budget, the craftsman chooses not to demand additional payment. They move to the courtyard to test the sword properly. The atmosphere shifts from discussion to demonstration. Facing a prepared log, Rent steadies his stance. The grip feels natural in his hand, and the weapon responds as if aligned with his strength, ready for battle. In the courtyard, Rent steadies his stance and raises the new sword. He expresses silent gratitude before beginning the test. With a swift motion, he swings downward toward the log. The blade cuts cleanly through the wood, splitting it apart in a single strike. Fragments scatter across the ground as he lowers the weapon. The craftsman observes closely, noting the clear increase in his physical strength. Preparing for a second attempt, Rent channels magic into the blade. Energy gathers along its edge as he charges forward with controlled force. Vitality and spirit flow through the weapon, amplifying the strike. The impact releases a powerful burst, sending shattered pieces outward and proving the sword's true capability. The craftsman studies the damaged log closely. Careful inspection reveals that the impact differs depending on the power infused into the blade. Marks within the wood show distinct effects. Magic produces a smooth, flowing cut, while vitality drives force deep into the target and destroys it from the inside. He reflects on the similarities between magic and spirit. Though often treated separately, their outward results appear closely related. Unusual changes soon draw attention. Small sprouts begin growing from the sliced surfaces, emerging directly from the clean cuts. Examining the pieces in his hands, the craftsman recognizes patterns connected to spirit. The reaction suggests a protective blessing tied to divine forces. After observing the strange reaction in the wood, Rent pauses. A new idea forms in his mind, and he asks to keep one of the cut pieces for further testing. Standing in the courtyard, he considers a greater experiment. Instead of using each power separately, he proposes combining magic, vitality. The craftsman recalls hearing of rare cases where two forces were fused together. Despite the uncertainty, curiosity outweighs hesitation. The weapon was built to endure multiple powers, though not necessarily together. Rent raises both blades and steadies himself. Energy gathers around him as he prepares to test the limits of the sword and his own control. He focuses on controlling the flow and imagines the energies blending within his body before entering the blade. Power gathers at the tip, becoming dense and unstable. The pressure strains his control, and maintaining balance grows increasingly difficult. Despite the tension, he forces spirit into the mixture. The three forces collide inside the weapon, creating violent fluctuations. Waves of energy spiral outward across the courtyard. The craftsman watches in alarm as the air trembles around Rent. Cracks spread along the blade under the overwhelming strain. A burst of force erupts, threatening to shatter the sword as the combined powers surge beyond safe limits. Clad in his skeletal form, Rent draws a vast surge of energy into his sword. Light bursts outward, and the ground beneath him begins to split as the weapon shakes under pressure. Violent waves spiral from the blade, surrounding him in a storm of force. Control slips from his grasp, and the strain on the weapon grows worse with each passing second. Thin fractures race along the steel. Watching from nearby, a man realizes the sword is reaching its breaking point. Ignoring the danger, Rent brings the weapon down in a decisive strike. The impact detonates against the target, scattering debris as he steadies himself amid the fading shockwave. Fragments scatter through the air as the released blast surges forward. A chunk of wood is caught in the force and hurled away from the impact point. Energy compresses into a blinding sphere, pulling debris inward before bursting outward in a controlled shockwave. Rent and his companion watch the swirling mass settle. When the light fades, the wood has been crushed into a dense, smooth sphere. The attack's pressure has compacted it far beyond its original shape. The result leaves them uneasy. Such concentrated power is unstable and difficult to manage. A warning follows as Rent faces the consequences. Reminded that the next surge could harm his own body, Rent lowers his hood and listens as his companion explains the limits of his power. The technique requires a stronger material if he wishes to use it safely in real combat. Later, he tests the method again. Energy gathers around his blade, but once released, the force quickly fades. He continues refining the fusion of magic and vitality, channeling both into a single strike. The ground shatters under the impact of the improved attack. Although the sword remains intact, the cost of maintaining such energy proves far greater than expected. Even so, the new weapon and tactics expand his strategic options for future battles. Because his undead nature draws suspicion, Rent avoids the dungeon for now. At Lorraine and Sheila's urging, he keeps a low profile and stays away from crowded places. Several weeks pass quietly. During that time, he reflects on his growth and chooses to take on a modest request to test himself safely. The task is a simple copper coin quest. Cloaked and cautious, he travels along a rural path toward the designated area. At the guild, the receptionist explains the request. The reward is small, barely enough for bread, yet the task still requires an adventurer's effort. Though the payment is minor, the quest supports townsfolk in need, and Rent accepts it as steady practice. At the guild counter, Rent learns why no one wants the copper coin quest. The request's location makes adventurers hesitant, and most refuse to get involved. Rather than backing away, he shows interest. The unusual setting gives him another reason to accept, seeing potential beyond the small reward. The receptionist hands him a map and explains the details. In return, he asks to borrow something useful for the task, preparing carefully before departure. Reading the document outside, he confirms the destination, Teuton, Q's second orphanage in Malt. Standing before the large building's gates, Rent studies the structure quietly before stepping forward to begin the job. Rent passes through the orphanage gates and walks across the courtyard. The large building stands quiet as he approaches the entrance. He knocks firmly on the wooden door. The sound echoes inside while he waits without moving. After a brief pause, the door opens slightly. A young woman appears, surprised by the sight of the hooded skeleton before her. Realizing he is an adventurer sent from the guild, she relaxes and invites him in. Rent steps forward and explains his purpose calmly. Inside, children quickly gather around him in excitement. As the caretaker offers tea, the room fills with energy while Rent stands surrounded. As the children crowd around, some shout reckless warnings about adventurers. The caretaker quickly pulls them back, trying to prevent panic or injury. Rent lowers his hood slightly and introduces himself calmly. The young woman, Elise, admits she did not expect someone like him and hesitates before steadying herself. From behind a closed door, curious faces peek through small windows. Elise apologizes for the commotion while explaining that the children feel safe here. She adds that their guardian treats them kindly. Rent listens and says he does not mind being treated normally, despite his appearance. Seated at a table, Elise grows tired from the tension. Rent remains composed, accepting the atmosphere without complaint. Seated across from him, Elise questions his decision to accept such a minor task. Rent listens quietly as she studies him, unsure why a bronze adventurer would come for so little reward. He explains that visiting this place carries a personal purpose beyond payment. The single copper coin is not what truly matters to him. Raising a finger, Rent states that reasons depend on one's circumstances. For him, this request provides something he cannot gain elsewhere. After a pause, Elise stands and decides to guide him further inside. Leading him upstairs, she introduces him formally and asks permission for him to enter. Inside a quiet room, a nun introduces herself as Lillian Genie, a priestess of Teuton, Q. She thanks Rent for accepting the orphanage's request and greets him with calm courtesy, seated by the window. Lillian explains that her current condition prevents her from handling certain matters personally. Despite that, she expresses sincere gratitude for his assistance. Lowering her voice, she mentions trouble in the basement that cannot be ignored. For now, they have only managed temporary measures. Rent agrees to cooperate while Elise stays close at his side. He assures them that he has experience with similar requests. Outside, children continue playing, unaware of the quiet problem waiting below. By the window, Elise confides that the truth has been kept from Lillian to stop her from overexerting herself again. She explains that Lillian suffers from a rare illness tied to those who wield holy power. A healer has examined her before, yet the condition remains. Within such individuals, spirit energy draws in miasma over time. As it accumulates, the body slowly weakens. Without treatment from a high-ranking priest or saint, the illness will continue to worsen. The true purpose of the quest is then revealed. They need a dragon blood flower to create the required medicine. Dragon blood flower is revealed as a rare plant with strong effects against miasma. While its processed form is common in potions, a live specimen is far more potent and difficult to obtain. Flower grows only in the swamp of Tarask, a dangerous marsh filled with poisonous terrain and unstable ground. Understanding the risk, Rent accepts the task to retrieve the live flower, preparing himself to travel into the hazardous swamp. Inside a narrow corridor, a young girl faces a hooded adventurer and asks him to search for the dragon blood flower. Slowly the man pulls back his hood, exposing a skeletal face beneath. Shock spreads across the girl's expression when she realizes he is undead. After the surprise fades, she recalls that Lillian once kept flowers beside her bed. The undead figure listens in silence, paying close attention to her memory. Care for those flowers had always been careful and sincere. Remembering this, she reflects on Lillian's gentle nature. With calm resolve, the skeleton states that Lillian would likely appreciate such devotion and intends to bring flowers again next time. Bright determination, the girl declares she will gather the flower from the swamp of Tarask. Excitement quickly takes over when the undead adventurer accepts the task. She steps closer, grabbing his hands in gratitude, barely containing her surprise at his agreement. Plans are set for departure in the morning. Beneath the house, a hidden basement is revealed, leading down toward a darker path connected to their mission. Descending the stairs, she admits the basement holds real monsters. Despite calling it a bluff before, the skeleton follows calmly, unconcerned by the danger below. Inside the dim chamber, both acknowledge that minor monsters may appear on the way to the swamp. In the basement corridor, small creatures rush forward without warning. One leaps toward the girl, causing her to recoil in fear as the undead steps between them. The skeleton swiftly strikes the attacking rat, crushing it before it can bite. From the shadows ahead, a larger rat appears while smaller ones scatter around it. The undead observes their movement and identifies the bigger creature as their leader. Standing in the narrow passage, he draws a dagger and prepares carefully. The tight space limits movement, forcing him to rely on precise attacks. As the large rat lunges from above, he raises his blade and counters at the right moment, shielding the girl behind him. The undead swings his blade in a wide arc, cutting down the large rat midair. Its body falls heavily to the ground, scattering the smaller creatures around it. After the strike, he observes the corridor and notes that most of the remaining monsters begin to retreat. Sharp eyes glare from the darkness as another rat suddenly charges forward. Sensing the attack, he urges that the fight must end quickly. A smaller rat leaps from above, aiming for an opening near his shoulder. He tracks its movement calmly, ready to react. The creature grazes him with a shallow wound, but he remains steady. Remembering that the girl stands behind him, he chooses to guard her instead of dodging. The large rat lunges with full force, slamming into the undead's guard. He braces himself and absorbs the impact, refusing to let it reach the girl behind him. With a swift counterattack, he drives his weapon forward and strikes the monster directly. Dust and debris scatter as the rat is thrown back across the corridor. Turning slightly, he checks on the girl to ensure she is unharmed. She steadies herself and confirms she is safe. Suddenly, the fallen rat begins to twitch and swell unnaturally. Its body expands in a disturbing change, drawing his full attention. Standing firm, the undead faces the mutating creature at close range, prepared for whatever transformation follows. A sudden burst of light fills the corridor as the mutated rat releases strange energy. The undead stands firm, sensing a shift in the atmosphere around them. Silence follows the flash. The girl looks confused, unsure of what has just occurred, while the skeleton studies the creature carefully. An unusual connection forms between the undead and the rat. He feels a faint link, as if their senses have briefly aligned. Testing the bond, he gives a simple command and watches closely. The rat hesitates, reacting to his presence instead of attacking. To confirm the effect, he orders it to spin in place. The creature obeys, turning in circles while the girl watches in astonishment. Lying on the floor, the undead considers the strange link he felt. He concludes that a familiar bond may have formed between him and the rat during the surge of energy. The girl questions him with curiosity, trying to understand what likely happened. Recalling knowledge about vampires and familiars, he reasons that his blood may have triggered the change. Holding the rat in his hand, he tests the bond by focusing his thoughts. The creature responds to his intent without resistance. When he commands the remaining rats to leave, they scatter obediently through the corridor, clearing the basement at once. With the threat gone, they begin tidying the basement. Broken wood and scattered debris are cleared, as both work steadily to restore order. Using simple tools and coordinated effort, they finish cleaning the room. The once damaged space now appears neat and calm again. Outside the building, children gather and wave as the undead raises a hand in acknowledgement. He walks away through the open gate while the children observe from behind. The girl remains near them, following his figure with her eyes. Later, in a quiet place, careful hands adjust a ribbon around the small rat familiar. The creature sits calmly, now treated less like a monster and more like a companion. Inside, a quiet room, a woman gently holds the rat familiar and examines it with interest. Calmly, she states that she will take responsibility for caring for it. The undead listens, while she reassures him that a few extra mice will not cause trouble. With curiosity, she explains that a monster familiar could also serve as a valuable research sample. Carefully, she attempts basic communication and considers what it might eat. The undead acknowledges that some level of understanding seems possible. When she offers her finger, the rat suddenly bites. She reacts in pain, realizing its behavior resembles that of its former leader. The undead conveys the rat's intention to seek better food from now on. The woman studies the creature thoughtfully and begins considering a proper name for it. After reflecting on its former role as leader among the other rats, she decides the name should reflect status rather than kindness. The undead listens as she reaches her conclusion. With that settled, the woman looks forward to working with the newly named familiar. Morning light spreads over the village of Malt as a hooded undead figure stands, facing the rising sun. The new day begins, marking a quiet change in his existence. Inside a modest house, a young woman prepares stew over the fire. She tastes the broth carefully while the building rests in silence. The undead adventurer enters the room. His skeletal face remains hidden beneath the hood as he observes her movements and the prepared meal. She serves a bowl of meat and vegetable stew, placing it before him without hesitation. Though he no longer needs food, He removes his mask and slowly eats, experiencing a rare moment of normal life once again. Undead adventurer lifts the spoon to his exposed jaw and tastes the stew. Surprise spreads across his hollow features as he realizes he can still sense flavor. He across the table watches calmly while the woman explains the importance of regaining sensation. The undead feels a faint return to something he once considered human. She speaks seriously, emphasizing that routine and environment shape a person's nature. He listens in silence, absorbing her reasoning. They continue eating together at the small table, maintaining a steady and composed atmosphere. The warm meal represents more than sustenance. For him, it becomes a symbol of fortune and a fragile connection to humanity. After finishing his meal, the undead adventurer prepares to leave for the swamp of Tarask. Gratitude passes between them as they sit across the wooden table. He lowers his head slightly, acknowledging her support before focusing again on the task ahead. As she stirs the remaining stew, he reflects on how strangely appetizing it feels. His altered body seems to accept the orc meat without rejection. Suddenly, a small creature leaps onto the table. The woman calmly places a portion before it, showing no surprise at its bold behavior. The creature devours the food quickly, making loud noises and leaving the bowl empty. Small creature suddenly bites the undead adventurer's finger. Instead of reacting with anger, he watches calmly as it tumbles onto the table. She explains her unusual cooking methods while holding her notes. Various ingredients, including reptile tails and insects, have been used to test reactions. Outside the house, the quiet village remains unchanged. She considers further experiments, believing the quality of the meat and fat influences taste and sensation. A wide view of the town rests beneath distant hills, peaceful and undisturbed. Soon after, a wagon travels through a rocky pass, moving steadily toward the swamp where the undead adventurer's next task awaits. Arrival at a narrow mountain path marks the next stage of the journey. Inside the carriage, a cloaked skeleton sits quietly as driver announces they have reached the destination. Rock walls rise high on both sides while wagon comes to a halt. Driver warns that Swamp of Tarask is no place for ordinary people. Few adventurers dare to approach this region. Driver offers a final word of caution before turning carriage around. Carriage rolls away, leaving lone figure standing. Before Long Canyon Trail, path ahead stretches between stone cliffs. Journey must continue on foot from here. Distance, isolation, and harsh terrain explain why reaching swamp is already a challenge before any real danger begins. Vast marshland stretches beyond sight, air heavy with poison that threatens any living creature. Ordinary travelers would require special tools or constant purification magic to endure such conditions. Cloaked undead advances without fear. Equipment meant to guard against toxins proves unnecessary for him, as corrupted air has no effect on his altered form. Gloved hand lifts calmly while a small creature watches nearby. This body rejects every trace of poison, rendering contamination meaningless. Earlier experiments confirmed this abnormal trait. After becoming undead, exposure to many toxins showed no reaction, granting him a rare advantage within this deadly marsh. Memory of earlier discussions surfaces as he advances through poisoned marsh. Lorraine had concluded that a zombie's body, already dead. Purpose behind accepting this dangerous request becomes clear. Entering a body immune to poison allows him to explore terrain others avoid. Sudden warning reaches him from behind. Instinct takes over as he twists sharply, cloak flaring while something lunges from blind spot. Blade flashes in dim light. A goblin armed with a crude weapon appears too late, caught mid-attack as steel drives through its small frame. Creature collapses into mud, weapon slipping from its grasp. Silence returns to marsh, leaving him alert for whatever might strike next. Ripples spread across marsh surface as small shapes shift beneath mud. Lone figure stands at center, sensing movement from every direction. Multiple goblins rise at once, surrounding him with crude bows and blades. Their eyes fix on target as they prepare coordinated attack. One leaps from hiding, launching downward with weapon raised. He recognizes their tactic of ambushing prey from below, while others provide support. Arrows cut through air, yet swift motion carries him beyond their aim. Blade sweeps in wide arc, striking through nearest attacker without slowing. Outnumbered position means little now, as strength and speed in his current state allow him to cut through formation before they can regroup. Steel flashes in rapid succession as he spins through remaining goblins. Shockwaves ripple across mud while multiple attackers fall at once, their formation collapsing instantly. Silence settles over marsh. Bodies lie scattered around him, weapons half buried in wet ground. Gaze shifts toward faint miasma, drifting above terrain. Even after battle, poison fails to hinder him, its effects dulled by blood and scars from dragon encounter. Small companion rests nearby, having sensed enemies before attack began. He decides to collect magic stones from fallen creatures as proof of completion. Marsh still glimmers with toxic light, yet path forward remains clear as he prepares to move deeper into hostile land. Dark puddles shift across marsh surface, forming poison slimes that thrive in toxic mud. Nearby, goblins and other creatures show signs of adapting to this harsh land. Unusual growth surrounds area, including massive mushrooms and organisms shaped by constant exposure to venomous air. Such evolution creates an ecosystem unlike any other region. Kneeling beside a cluster of rare plants, cloaked undead carefully gathers samples into a pouch. High market value draws certain adventurers despite danger. Many who chased profit here never returned from expedition. Across barren horizon, silence dominates poisoned landscape. Risk outweighs reward for most, leaving this place isolated, feared, and largely untouched by human ambition. Map rests in his hand as he studies blank, repeating terrain. Flat marsh offers no landmarks, making direction difficult, despite careful planning. Suspended bridge suddenly appears ahead, stretching across deep ravine. Structure looks deliberate, standing out against natural landscape. Placement suggests something uncommon lies beyond. Few would build a crossing in such a remote and poisonous region without purpose. Small companion shifts uneasily as he approaches wooden planks. Hand tightens a round weapon while he considers whether passing through is wise. Creature suddenly reacts, body tensing as if sensing presence nearby. He turns slightly, attention sharpening, aware that bridge may not be as empty as it first seemed. Halfway across the swaying bridge, wooden planks snap beneath his boots, ropes tremble, as something massive surges upward from the ravine below. Structure collapses in an instant. He plunges downward with falling debris, cloak whipping violently as a roaring vortex of water forms beneath him. Within churning depths, enormous fish with circular maws close in from every side. Surrounded midair and underwater, he steadies his blade while descending. Pressure builds as creatures rush simultaneously. Physical strength alone proves insufficient against so many attackers in their own domain. Light gathers along his sword, forming a sharp column of purified force. A sweeping strike releases compressed energy across the water's surface. Water finally calms, and he drifts toward shallow ground. Exhaustion weighs on his limbs, yet he manages to pull himself onto muddy shore, barely steady but intact. Nearby, small companion, nibbles calmly on stored tree nuts, seemingly unconcerned by recent danger. Cracked shells scatter across wet soil as quiet chewing continues. He kneels, understanding that companion's earlier warning had not been about bridge itself. Ground suddenly trembles beneath his boots. Subtle vibrations ripple outward, spreading across marsh surface in widening circles. A massive disturbance erupts ahead, sending spray and debris skyward. He stares into rising column of water and mist. From the collapsing waters, a massive horned creature rises. Its scaled body towers above the marsh, claws extended as it roars across the poisoned land. Cloaked undead looks up, without retreating. Name of this region carries meaning, because such a being dwells here. The monster stands fully revealed, dominant and feared. Presence alone explains why few survive this swamp, and why its true ruler is widely known among adventurers. In the depths of the swamp, a massive Tarrasque rises, its armored shell and thick limbs pressing into the earth. Towering scales and 6 powerful legs become fully visible as poison fog spreads from the creature's body. Without warning, the Tarrasque surges forward, jaws wide and claws cutting through the ground. The impact of its charge shakes the area as Rent braces against the assault. A crushing strike slams downward, scattering stone and soil in every direction. Rent shifts aside at the last moment and regains his stance. Noticing the monster's slowing movements, he advances decisively. Closing the gap, Rent commits to close combat, determined to end the fight. The Tarrasque swings a massive claw downward, its roar shaking the swamp. Rent leaps aside as the ground splits beneath the impact, dirt and stone bursting into the air. Steel collides against the creature's limb, but the hardened scales resist the strike, sending vibrations through his arms. Recovering quickly, Rent channels his strength into another blow. The blade scrapes across the shell, sparks flashing as he tests the monster's defense and gauges its limits. Enraged, the beast slams its body into the earth. The shock wave spreads outward, cracking the terrain and forcing him backward. Though shaken by the impact, Rent regains balance and prepares to press the attack once more. Rent studies the Tarrasque's thick scales and realizes his blade cannot pierce them directly. Observing the narrow gaps between the plates, energy gathers around him as he activates a fusion of magic and vitality. Power surges through his body, strengthening both his weapon and resolve. With a swift motion, he launches forward and drives his attack into a gap in the armor. A muffled explosion erupts from within the Tarrasque. Its massive frame trembles as the internal blast spreads through its shell, Smoke clears to reveal the monster's jaws still moving, though damaged. The Tarrasque remains standing, its threat far from over. Fragments of shell and stone scatter as the Tarrasque withstands the internal blast. Rent faces it cautiously, watching for signs of collapse. Instead of falling, the creature surges forward with renewed force. Its massive body crashes down, driving shockwaves through the ground and forcing him to retreat. The Tarrasque no longer acts on instinct alone, it adapts, keeping space and adjusting its movements to prevent another close strike. Recognizing the difficulty of facing such intelligence alone, Rent steadies himself and reassesses the situation. Small figure appears behind him, drawing his attention. Realizing he is no longer alone, Rent prepares for the next phase of the battle. A wave of energy spreads from Rent's outstretched hand, but his strength suddenly weakens. The tiny creature moves swiftly through the air, absorbing the gathered energy. Realization strikes Rent as he understands that his strength is being redirected for a purpose. Using the borrowed power, the small ally launches sharp, concentrated strikes at the Tarrasque's head. The creature continues its assault, diving and crashing into weak points along the shell. Fragments break loose as the massive body begins to lose balance. Lightning, like energy, surges across the Tarrasque's frame. Watching closely, Rent sees the attacks taking effect as the monster's movements grow unstable. Rent realizes the power taken from him was not lost but transferred. Understanding the nature of Spirit's ability, he steadies himself and watches the battle's flow. Above the Tarrasque, smoke rises from its damaged shell. Spirit's penetration proves more effective than the earlier explosive force, targeting the interior through narrow gaps. Dark streaks of impact carve across the monster's body as Spirit dives repeatedly. The small companion falls back, exhausted from the assault. Rent moves closer, checking its condition while the towering enemy struggles to remain upright. Energy flows gently between them once more. Through shared power, Rent restores Spirit's strength, preparing together for the battle's final exchange. Rent tightens his grip on his sword and focuses on creating a final opening. Confidence returns as he acknowledges the support he received and prepares to act. Across the battlefield, the Tarrasque lifts its head, smoke rising from its damaged shell. A cloud of poisonous breath spreads outward, darkening the air between them. The creature attempts to force distance and limit any direct approach, unaffected by the venom. Rent moves straight through the toxic mist. As an undead being, the poison fails to hinder him. Seizing that instant, he closes in and drives his blade toward a weakened section of the armor, committing fully to the decisive strike. Rent leaps onto the Tarrasque's head and raises his sword high. Using the damaged armor as footing, he drives his blade down with full force into the weakened gap. Energy erupts from the impact as he descends in a final strike. The monster's massive body recoils beneath him while he commits everything to the decisive blow. Power gathers within Rent's skeletal frame, filling him with concentrated force. Above the cavern, a winged figure drops sharply toward the dragon. Standing his ground, he channels everything into a single downward blow. The attack crashes into the dragon's scales and forces its massive body into the stone floor. Steel slices across hardened hide, tearing through flesh and sending fragments outward. The cavern shakes from the force of the cut. In response, the wounded dragon twists violently and opens its jaws, attempting to trap him between rows of fangs. Without hesitation, Rent advances through the danger and thrusts his weapon deeper into the beast, pressing the assault. The dragon's massive jaws snap shut, fangs grinding together as blood sprays across its scales. A heavy arm swings in desperation, claws tearing through stone and earth. The beast's strength falters as its movements grow slower and uneven. Beneath its towering frame, Rent remains steady, weapon buried deep in flesh. Cracks spread along the dragon's armored hide, while fragments scatter across the cavern floor. Moments later, the enormous body collapses onto the ground, shaking the surrounding land. Dust rises as the creature's struggles finally cease. Standing before the fallen monster, Rent lowers his blade, his skeletal face fixed on the defeated Tarrasque. A strange current swirls around Rent as light and particles drift from the fallen Tarrasque. The remains begin to dissolve, releasing magic into the air. Energy flows toward his skeletal body and sinks into him. He senses the absorption clearly, standing still, while the power settles within his frame. Even as the magic gathers, no transformation follows. His form remains unchanged, and he studies his hand in quiet assessment. Behind him, the massive corpse lies motionless. With the battle over, he turns his attention away from evolution and toward practical matters. Kneeling beside the remains, Rent prepares to collect materials from the defeated Tarrasque. Rent pulls out a large magic bag and sets it beside the fallen Tarrasque. He reflects briefly on surviving a dragon and the unexpected turn of events. Kneeling near the corpse, he prepares the bag for use. Its reinforced design shows it was made to carry heavy and unusual loads. With steady movements, he begins packing parts of the monster. The bag expands to contain the massive remains. The Tarrasque's crystals, hide, and hardened shell are treated as valuable resources. Each piece is gathered carefully for later sale. After securing everything, Rent lifts the burden onto his back and leaves the battlefield, carrying the entire corpse with him. With the heavy bag secured over his shoulder, Rent considers the reward from defeating the Tarrasque alone. The profit ensures he will not struggle for money anytime soon. His thoughts shift to the area nearby, recalling both the dragon and a structure built by human hands. Their presence suggests something unusual about this place. He studies the surrounding swamp and concludes that dragon blood flowers must grow close to where the dragon's life force settled. Ordinary conditions would change the plant's nature, stripping it of its special qualities. The environment determines what it becomes. Only by absorbing the swamp's poison and the dragon's power does the flower mature into the rare red bloom he seeks. Rent walks along the rocky edge of the swamp, recalling that dragon blood flowers grow wherever a Tarrasque appears. He understands that the flowers take root in soil tainted by venom, nourished by the monster's lingering influence. The Tarrasque and the rare blooms exist in the same cycle. Before him stretches a wide field of white blossoms, thriving in a region known for lethal miasma. Despite the danger that defines the swamp, the sight feels calm and undisturbed. His hollow gaze rests on the scenery as he searches for a fitting description. In silence, Rent regards the vast field and recognizes it as a place worthy of being called paradise. A lone hooded figure stands in a vast swamp covered with dense plants. Beneath the hood, his skeletal face observes the scenery. The purified air and thriving vegetation show clear signs of change within the swamp. Dragon blood flowers bloom across the land, cleansing toxins from the soil. Strange plants grow freely, and birds and beasts gather, forming a new ecosystem. Insects rest on the leaves, yet they would die if they left this purified area. Creatures born here cannot survive beyond the flower's influence. The undead adventurer considers the value of this discovery and prepares to bring the dragon blood flowers back. Rent steadies himself and reminds his purpose in the swamp. The dragon blood flowers must be collected before he leaves this place. Carefully, he examines a single stalk. Even one flower appears large and powerful, and removing too many could damage the fragile environment. As he reaches out, a small creature named Edel moves to nibble on the plant. Rent watches closely, aware that everything here reacts differently to the flower. The moment his fingers brush the petals, a sharp shock runs through his hand. From a distance, he studies the field again and concludes that the flowers possess a natural defense system. A faint movement catches Rent's attention. His hollow gaze sharpens beneath the hood as he scans the quiet swamp. Suddenly, he turns toward the source. Across the open ground, a lone swordsman approaches with calm steps, showing no fear. Long hair flows behind the stranger, and a hand rests near the sword at his side. His presence feels steady, as if he belongs in this dangerous land. Rent remains still, acknowledging the unexpected encounter. The tension between them settles over the field of flowers. Standing face to face, the swordsman studies the undead adventurer. The meeting in the swamp of the Tarrasque marks the beginning of an uncertain exchange. The swordsman reveals small tools and a flask at his side. Antidotes, magic devices, and holy water allow him to move safely through the swamp. With calm confidence, he studies Rent's covered face. His sharp gaze suggests that the undead adventurer also has reasons for entering this land. Petals drift across the field as both stand apart. Neither reaches for a weapon, understanding that fighting here would serve no purpose. Turning slightly, the swordsman explains he is not an adventurer. His presence in the swamp follows a different purpose. Lowering his eyes, he admits the dragon blood flowers are required for someone he serves, leaving Rent to reconsider his next move. The swordsman explains that he usually remains at his master's side, but recently his master has been unable to rise from bed. Concern led him into the swamp, holding a dragon blood flower. He reveals that his master values research over treatment and seeks to study the bloom directly. Rent listens quietly, small creatures shifting beneath his cloak. He recognizes the risk of entering such a place for the sake of another. The swordsman admits he cannot stay long in this dangerous land. Taking even one flower back is already a burden. Calmly, he states that only the reckless would accept such work, and outside assistance may eventually be required. The swordsman suggests that someone with skill could handle work in this swamp. Rent listens without reacting, his hollow gaze steady, across the field. They speak of ranks and independence. Titles mean little here, survival depends on ability alone. The swordsman formally introduces himself as Isaac Holt, and states his intention to submit an official request. Rent responds with his own name and confirms his guild origin. With the flowers gathered, the discussion nears its end. Both understand the danger and the weight of what was proposed. Before departing, Rent tosses a small item toward Isaac, offering it as practical assistance for the harsh swamp. Isaac notices that Rent lacks holy water. A faint smile crosses his face as he points out the oversight. Light gathers around Isaac's figure as he prepares to depart. He leaves the item behind as a sign of goodwill between them. Rent catches the flask and inspects it carefully. The quality is high, likely taken from a respected church, and valuable enough to cost several gold coins. Holding the flask, he wonders about the master who commands such loyalty. The mention of a butler lingers in his thoughts. With holy water ensuring safer passage, Rent withdraws from the swamp alongside Edel, leaving without encountering the Tarrasque. Several days later, Rent arrives at a workshop where rare dragon blood flowers are carefully examined on a long table. A potion healer named Norman Handel studies the petals and roots. He explains that despite minor damage, the materials remain usable. After further inspection, he confirms that the flowers can be refined into medicine for Julian's miasma accumulation syndrome. The children nearby react with visible relief. Norman reflects that simply entering the swamp of Tarrasque is already difficult. Most people focus on survival rather than preserving the plant's quality. Even so, he notes that with proper handling, the dragon blood flower holds remarkable medicinal value, though it requires careful preparation. Norman explains that with careful refinement, a single stalk can produce multiple medicines beyond treating miasma accumulation syndrome. Rent offers additional stalks he kept in reserve. He allows the workshop to use them freely if needed. The children mention hearing about his kindness from Elias, recalling how he provided medicine in poorer districts. Rent calmly replies that he already has connections with a potion healer, ensuring cooperation benefits everyone involved. Moved by his actions, Norman expresses gratitude, believing many lives may be saved through the refined dragon blood flowers. Outside the workshop, the children express their gratitude. Norman assures them that Lillian's medicine will be completed within a few days. Rent watches the children leave with lighter steps. With the materials delivered and the request fulfilled, he considers the task complete. A document is handed to him as formal recognition from the orphanage, acknowledging his assistance and effort. Holding the paper, Rent reflects that an adventurer's role differs for each person, yet it always involves facing danger for the sake of others. A skeletal adventurer in a dark cloak sits across from a young girl at a wooden table. She holds a written request while looking at him with hesitation. She reflects on her thoughts about growing older for her sister's sake. She studies the undead figure carefully, realizing he is an adventurer despite his appearance. In a quiet room, her sick sister lies in bed. The illness is slow but fatal, leaving only a few years. Undead explains that the dragon blood flower has already been obtained, removing the original purpose of the request. With her sister safe, the girl chooses a new path. Inspired by the undead adventurer's actions, the young girl faces the undead adventurer without fear. His hollow gaze studies her as she listens carefully to his reasoning about becoming an adventurer. Calmly, he explains that adventure is not an escape from life's limits. Without purpose, the path leads nowhere. He describes the harsh trials ahead, warning that talent alone cannot guarantee success. Turning away briefly, the girl considers the weight of responsibility. The undead reminds her that every choice carries consequences that must be accepted fully. With steady resolve, he concludes that resilience is essential. Endurance and the refusal to surrender define those who truly walk the path of an adventurer. The girl beams with renewed determination, declaring her dream to become a great adventurer. Across the wooden table, the skeletal adventurer lowers his head slightly, uncertain how to respond to such praise. From above, the quiet room reflects their modest surroundings. He remains silent for a moment, then reflects inwardly on the changes around him. The once neglected orphanage has grown cleaner and more orderly through steady effort. Suddenly, a small hooded mouse appears, startling the space with sharp squeaks. More mice rush forward, driving away insects that scatter across the floor. Later, the undead stands beside the girl, acknowledging that the small creature and its companions have cleared the cellar of pests. The undead observes the small mouse closely as dark energy flows through the air. He realizes that the magic within the ghoul enhances the abilities of lesser beings. Through that influence, even ordinary animals can act as controlled familiars. Leaning down, he studies the mouse while considering the knowledge it could provide. Creatures that were once hostile now move calmly under its direction. The mouse squeaks and gestures, as if reporting what it has sensed. The undead watches carefully, measuring the extent of this unusual authority. From above, he reflects that through these mice, information from across the city could be gathered. The undead admits that the power guiding the mice belongs to him, not the small creature. He recognizes the ability could become extremely useful in the future, showing interest without overthinking the matter. The idea of handling monsters does not frighten her, and she considers it almost enjoyable. Outside, the orphanage stands quietly under the sky. She reflects that thinking differently might improve her future. Later, inside a room lined with books, a composed woman drinks calmly. She is identified as the witch who may accept the girl. Witch agrees to evaluate her magical ability first. Across the table, the undead watches silently, trusting that the girl will endure whatever test awaits her. Inside a quiet dining room, discussion turns to the girl's future. A promise is made to watch over her when time allows. A brief pause follows when the phrase, "free time," is mentioned. Curiosity rises, and mild suspicion appears at the table. Plates filled with rich food sit between them. Celebration for a recent victory is revealed as nothing more than an attempt to ease boredom. Embarrassment surfaces as misunderstanding spreads. Wine is sipped calmly while teasing words highlight how easily tension can be triggered. Conversation shifts toward distance created by undead appearance. Advice is offered, suggesting better understanding of youthful feelings, despite outward differences. Dinner continues in a dim room as attention shifts toward a young presence nearby. From an upper floor, small figure can be seen below, confirming she remains close. Wine is lifted slowly, and sharp gaze fixes on skeletal companion. Suspicion rises as she suggests desire for another life may linger within him. Irritation flares, accusation follows, mocking his choice of words toward someone far younger. Flustered reaction bursts out in exaggerated praise. Compliments spill clumsily, offered in desperate attempt to repair damage already done. Flowery admiration fills room, comparing her to sculpture and fresh snow. Silence answers him at last, leaving embarrassment to settle over table. Praise continues awkwardly as he adds more compliments about her kindness and gentle nature. Words spill out more smoothly than expected, surprising even himself. Suspicion grows as she questions where he learned to speak that way. Doubt crosses his mind. He wonders whether such phrases sound like something meant for many women, and unease settles over him. Turning her back slightly, she remarks that this is first time he has spoken to her in that manner. Wine swirls in glass as she calmly concludes he would never say those things to anyone else. Quiet acceptance softens atmosphere once more. Meal nears its end as empty plate is noticed. Relief quietly settles in, and reflection follows about how different life might have been without current path as an adventurer. She rises from her seat, offering to bring more food. Satisfaction crosses his mind as he observes her improved mood. Direction given toward another room causes confusion. Realization dawns that steps are not leading to kitchen but elsewhere, raising quiet concern alone in her bedroom. She pauses and glances at her reflection. Slight flush on her face reveals lingering effect of wine. Standing before mirror, she admits to herself that too much was consumed. Embarrassment mixes with awareness, and room falls silent around her. Night stretches over a rocky landscape, silent and still beneath scattered stars. Several days pass and attention shifts to a large guild building overlooking a busy city. Inside, material dismantling continues in designated areas filled with workers and equipment. Activity echoes through the facility as adventurers deliver remains of defeated monsters. Massive carcasses are unloaded, chained. Administrator Dario Costa greets the undead adventurer, explaining that a recent surge of orcs caused delays and required additional labor. Within a reinforced cage, workers continue dismantling dangerous materials. Mention of an anti-poison mask arises, highlighting precautions necessary for handling toxic remains. Inside the dismantling area, a document is presented with an estimated price. Signature is requested if amount is acceptable, marking the start of formal evaluation. Shock crosses his hollow face as he studies the number. Value exceeds what he previously understood about market rates. Administrator explains that size and condition justify higher payment. Even so, he insists the assessment remains reasonable for such a specimen. Behind reinforced barriers, massive Tarrasque body fills the chamber. Mature age has thickened its hide, making leather stronger and more valuable for armor crafting. Absence of large neck cut raises suspicion, hinting that final blow may have been delivered differently than expected. Explanation begins with how a Tarrasque is usually defeated. Because poison surrounds its body, hunters attack from a distance. Among them lies a valuable poison gland, rarely recovered intact after magic and arrows tear through the body. Attention returns to the current specimen. Hide remains thick and usable, and even the internal parts appear preserved, suggesting careful handling during combat. Administrator confirms that listed estimate is guaranteed if materials sell for higher value later. Additional payment will be added accordingly. Workers gather before the massive carcass, promising to extract every usable part in prime condition, while the rest of the process is left in their hands. Administrator praises quality of the Tarrasque and promises highest possible price. Confidence fills his tone as agreement is reached. Trust is placed in dismantling team, and work begins immediately. Before leaving, mention of a mutual acquaintance lingers in the air. Outside facility, reflection follows. Surprise remains over generous valuation, especially for someone who once struggled at bronze rank. City stretches below bright sky as thoughts turn toward making amends. Intention forms to buy something for Lorraine, knowing funds will last for some time. Sudden interruption breaks calm moment. A guild staff member rushes forward, announcing an urgent request that has just arrived under his name. After leaving the guild, the undead adventurer is informed that a personal request has arrived under his name. The sender is identified as Isaac from Mr. Isaac Hall. A guild staff member grows serious and asks whether he has ties to the Lacher family. Concern shows on her face as she studies his reaction. Explanation follows that the Lacher family is one of the oldest noble houses in Yaren, holding influence in Malt City for generations. Realization sets in that the request comes from a powerful household. The guild treats the matter with caution, knowing any involvement could carry significant consequences. Beneath the hood, the skeletal adventurer examines a small flower in his hand, observing its shape and texture while adjusting to his undead form. Snow drifts through the air as he approaches a vine-covered stone gate. The silent entrance marks the boundary of an unfamiliar area, and he steps beyond it despite the risk. Stretching endlessly ahead, a massive maze surrounds his lone figure. Narrow paths twist in every direction, leaving him without a clear sense of where to go. At the maze's center stands a towering mansion, rigid and imposing against the pale sky. Moving along a tight corridor, he remains cautious and proceeds deeper inside. A large crest is carved into the guild's stone wall, symbolizing the authority of the Lattice's family. Their name carries influence, though little is openly known about them. Inside the guild hall, a uniformed woman stands before the undead adventurer. She explains that the family is secretive, yet their requests are always accepted without hesitation. For generations, Malice Lord has governed with a clear and steady purpose. Conflicts involving the family are said to be non-existent. Documents are presented across a desk. The request bears the Lattice's seal, making refusal impossible. Holding the paper in his skeletal hand, the adventurer reviews the contents and prepares to proceed. The guild building rises beneath the sky, as approval is granted for the request. With the Lattice's seal confirmed, the undead adventurer accepts the task without hesitation. Standing before the vast maze once more, he studies a magical item known as Acacia's map. Holding the scroll open, he prepares to activate its power. Energy spreads across the parchment, and the maze's structure begins shifting. Walls grind and slide into new positions, altering the pathways ahead. When the movement stops, a clear route forms toward a distant gate. He lowers the map and advances carefully. Thorn-covered vines coil around the entrance, guarding the doorway as he approaches the final passage. Snow falls lightly as the undead adventurer looks toward the mansion ahead. Reaching it directly had not been part of his expectation. At the iron gate, a guard stands watch with spear in hand. The skeletal traveler pauses briefly, steadying himself before entering the estate grounds. Beyond the fence rises a grand residence with no visible alternate entrance. The grounds stretch wide, and the route forward appears limited to the main approach. The guard reflects on the garden's strange structure, shaped unnaturally by magical influence. Its shifting paths are said to respond to special tools. Facing the vast maze once more, the adventurer accepts that enduring its trials is the only way to proceed. Across the city, posters announce that completing the maze will earn a powerful magic tool. The challenge draws attention from many adventurers seeking reward and recognition. Crowds gather before the estate gate, yet most participants withdraw after facing the maze's shifting corridors. Near the entrance, the undead adventurer listens as the guard recalls how the paths once closed after a full attempt, leaving challengers trapped inside. Despite the danger, one successful attempt in the past earned a magic item from the head of the Lattice's family. Now stationed at the gate, the guard carries regret, while the skeletal adventurer considers the trial ahead once more. Near the iron gate, the undead adventurer asks the guard about the loss of his former position. Standing straight with spear in hand, the guard explains that steady work still remains for those who live with discipline. A brief silence follows as the skeletal traveler adjusts his cloak. He listens without judgment, taking in the guard's reflection. With a final nod, the adventurer turns away from the gate and steps back toward the maze's entrance. Above the mansion, the sun shines brightly while he advances along the narrow path, preparing to face the shifting labyrinth once again. Petals scatter across the estate grounds, as the undead adventurer faces the vast mansion. Beyond the walls stretches an enormous hedge maze covering most of the grounds. He pauses briefly, taking in the structure that blocks direct access to the residence. Within the labyrinth, narrow passages twist tightly around him. The entire arrangement is said to be controlled by a powerful magic tool that governs its shifting design. Elsewhere, a woman explains that magic tools fall into two categories: relics found in dungeons and those crafted by skilled artisans. She notes that relics often carry unique effects, while the skeletal adventurer listens and considers the challenge ahead. On a wooden table rest a robe, a lantern, and a circular device. The researcher indicates that the robe and Acacia's map are examples of valuable magic tools. The skeletal adventurer lifts the ring-shaped item for inspection. It is revealed to be a crafted tool made by skilled hands rather than discovered in a dungeon. Seated across from him, the woman explains that even artificial tools can hold great worth if designed by advanced engineers. She describes how analyzing rare items often leads to new discoveries and deeper understanding of magical principles. Leaning forward with interest, she expresses a desire to study the items he carries whenever an opportunity arises. Within the snowy maze, the undead adventurer considers the immense magic required to control such vast land. Raising his arm, he prepares to act as wind sweeps through the narrow corridors. Snow scatters while he advances between towering hedges. From above, the labyrinth shifts once more, its walls forming complex patterns that obscure any clear destination. A growing sense of doubt crosses his mind as he notices countless roses blooming among the hedges, distinct from ordinary plants. Passing beneath an arch covered in flowers, he pauses in sudden realization, sensing that the garden itself holds a hidden purpose. Climbing the long staircase, the undead adventurer approaches a pavilion at the maze's heart. A lone figure waits beneath its domed roof, seated calmly at a prepared table. Petals drift through the air as a woman in elegant attire holds a teacup among blooming roses. She remains composed, aware of his arrival. With closed eyes, she questions whether he intends to surrender. He turns slightly, signaling his resolve to continue, despite the difficulty. From above, the garden's paths stand ready to shift again if he chooses to proceed. Instead of hostility, she offers tea and refreshments, inviting him to rest before facing the maze once more. The undead adventurer accepts the invitation and follows her guidance. A teapot and cups are arranged neatly on the table as he takes a seat across from her. She smiles faintly, noting that visitors rarely reach this place. The meeting carries quiet significance within the still pavilion. Beneath the glass dome, they sit together as light filters from above. The encounter marks a turning point, setting the stage for a new change in his path. At the top of a quiet garden stairway, Rent sits across from a young noble girl beneath a domed pavilion. As he studies her presence, Rent senses something unusual. The feeling around her seems distant from ordinary reality, calm yet unnatural. Observing her features and composed behavior, he concludes she belongs to the Lebrau family. Her appearance suggests she is around 12 or 13 years old. He looks closer at her face and posture. A possibility forms in his mind about her true condition. Attention shifts to the ornate tea set. Rent recognizes it as a magic tool, confirming his suspicion. The young noble calmly explains that enchanted tea sets are treasured by powerful families, symbols of status and refined knowledge. Displayed on the table, the delicate cups and pot appear ordinary at first glance, yet records tell of wars fought over similar tools. Even rumors of them carry weight. Memories surface in Rent's mind of drinking from a magical vessel in a frozen land, its water never cooling. Seated across from her, he listens as she expresses interest in his perspective, appreciating words from someone beyond noble society. Attention returns to the rare tea set, discovered long ago in a dungeon, its existence confirming its magical origin. The noble girl reflects on the mystery of magic tools, wondering whether human desire shaped them, or if someone once enjoyed tea deep within a dungeon. As they remain seated beneath the pavilion, she shifts the topic and asks about the specific ability of this tea set. Rent recalls its function, explaining that magic stones preserve the flavor of previously brewed leaves. After hearing this, he accepts a serving. Through the tool's power, he senses the layered taste contained within the tea. He drinks carefully despite his skeletal face. The girl studies him quietly, noticing the mask and questioning how he manages to drink. As Rent drinks, his form briefly shifts, responding to his will. The mask reacts to his intentions, revealing its unnatural nature. The girl observes him with fascination, realizing the mask resembles a cursed object more than a simple magic tool. With a steady gaze, she proposes acquiring it and promises any reward necessary to satisfy him. She explains that her family collects rare magical items and questions what value he finds in keeping such a mask. Rent calmly refuses. He admits he would give it if he could, but the mask is bound to him by a curse, making removal impossible. She lowers her head and apologizes for suggesting payment in exchange for the mask. She assumes he must hold a personal attachment to it. He dismisses the matter and redirects attention to the tea set, asking about its value instead. Calmly, she answers that the previous generation acquired it for around 300 platinum coins, surprising him. The weight of that number settles in his thoughts. Such wealth would allow him to live freely without struggle. After finishing their brief tea gathering, he reflects that despite everything, removing the cursed mask by his own power remains impossible. From above, the two finish their tea beneath the pavilion as petals drift around them. Both raise their cups in quiet composure. After setting the cup down, Rent prepares to leave. She asks if he will be departing soon, and he confirms the tea was excellent. He wonders if they will meet again. With calm certainty, she believes they most likely will, and states she also enjoyed their encounter. Standing beneath the open dome, he says he will ask her name when that time comes. She offers a small hint instead. With closed eyes and a faint smile, she advises him not to look directly at the sun. Rent leaves the pavilion and steps into the garden maze. Her final words echo in his mind, urging him to consider their meaning. He moves through the narrow paths surrounded by tall hedges. From above, the maze stretches wide before the grand estate. Petals drift across the grounds as the mansion rises beyond the labyrinth. The setting feels calm, yet isolating, pausing beneath the open sky. He reflects that he does not feel any closer to understanding the path forward. Remembering advice about the sun offering no guidance, he concludes that his escape from the maze was not insight, but simple luck. As he walks beneath the sun, Rent recalls how his senses sharpened after becoming a ghoul, even surpassing his former human limits. Unease lingers in his thoughts. He doubts he is imagining things. Yet if it is only illusion, there is little he can do. Her warning about the sun resurfaces in his mind while he continues forward through the maze. His foot strikes a small rock on the path, sending it rolling across the ground. Before it can travel far, the stone suddenly vanishes. Rent stares at the empty space, reaching out carefully to confirm what just occurred. Rent raises his hand and confirms the phenomenon as spatial teleportation. The surrounding hedges shift subtly, proving the maze is not fixed. Examining the ground, he notes faint magic circles, but cannot clearly detect their energy flow. Observing the structure from above, he realizes he was misled by the maze's movement. Its true nature is a garden tool that alters space itself. He concludes the sun has not moved at all. Instead, the maze rearranges space to mimic the direction one expects. Calmly memorizing the layout in his mind, Rent plucks a rose and prepares to use it as a marker to navigate forward. Rent recalls the warnings about the sun and realizes the advice was meant to mislead him. By avoiding it, he had wandered through the shifting maze until evening. Standing beneath the open sky, he calmly accepts the deception and acknowledges the precision behind it. Exiting the labyrinth, he faces the grand estate and concludes that the one ruling this place carefully manipulates anyone who steps inside. In the courtyard of a grand mansion, a hooded skeleton stands beneath the tower after completing the maze. Snow falls quietly as he realizes he has finally reached this place. Two figures approach across the courtyard. A tall man with long hair walks beside a young noblewoman dressed in formal attire, both observing the undead adventurer calmly. She reveals herself as the head of the Latour family, Laura Latour, presenting her identity with composed confidence. Indicates the tall man as her attendant, Isaac Halt, who stands silently at her side. Copper, class adventurer, once known as Lento Vivi, faces them steadily, awaiting what comes next. Head of the Latour family questions the undead adventurer about how long he endured within the maze and how he managed to overcome it. Standing before her, the hooded skeleton explains that escape was not simple at first. Careful thought and reflection helped him grasp the meaning behind her earlier words. A faint pause follows, as he admits his earlier assumptions were mistaken. Laura studies him closely, realizing he understood what truly allowed him to emerge. Memories of his former self surface enhanced senses from his ghoul body gave him an advantage others would not possess. The tall attendant opens the door, signaling the end of the test as the discussion concludes. A spiral staircase descends deep underground as Laura leads the way to the Latour family's magic tool vault. Beneath a circular opening, Laura explains that those who complete the maze are granted the right to choose a magic tool. The vault serves as proof of respect toward capable individuals. The skeleton considers the value of such a reward, recognizing it could strengthen him as an adventurer. Isaac walks calmly along the stairs while Laura clarifies that special cases may alter what is available. Their steps echo through the tower, holding a lantern. Laura continues downward, guiding him further into the hidden chamber. Light from embedded magic tools illuminates the spiral staircase as they continue downward. The staircase seems endless, circling deep beneath the estate. He wonders how many tools have been gathered over generations before finally reaching the bottom. At last, they stand before a massive sealed door covered in intricate patterns. Laura steps forward and places her hand upon it. The mechanism responds instantly, and the heavy doors begin to open with force. Inside lies a vast underground chamber, wide and silent, revealing the scale of the hidden vault. Within the underground chamber, Isaac activates a light-producing magic tool. Its glow spreads across the dark vault as Laura confirms that everything stored inside consists of collected magic tools. Small lantern-like devices flicker along the walls. In response to Isaac's gesture, floating lights travel outward, illuminating the vast interior. As brightness fills the chamber, the undead adventurer steps forward and witnesses an enormous mound stretching across the floor. Countless objects lie piled together: armor, weapons, ornaments, and strange artifacts gathered over many years by the Latour family. Standing before the overwhelming sight, he quietly acknowledges the immense quantity preserved within the hidden vault. Laura explains that the vault was once far more chaotic, with each new addition carelessly piled atop the last. Shelves and sections now divide the items according to purpose, type, and age. Objects are sorted between crafted tools and those discovered in ruins or dungeons. Even so, the chamber is too large to maintain perfectly. Among valuable relics, worthless pieces remain mixed in, awaiting proper evaluation. The undead adventurer observes the disorder and understands the nature of such accumulation. With calm certainty, Laura states that any true magic tool within the pile belongs to him if he can find it. Laura and Isaac guide the undead adventurer along the edges of the immense pile, offering explanations about any artifact that draws his attention while keeping a measured distance from the unstable stacks. He reveals that his original purpose involved gathering dragon blood flowers. The mention of that rare plant shifts Laura's expression as she listens carefully. Recognition follows when he refers to miasma accumulation syndrome, outlining its progressive stages from onset to deterioration. He explains that a single dragon blood flower can cure the illness in its early phase, yet the final stage becomes permanent. Laura admits that continued survival requires fresh dragon blood flowers, though the condition does not cause immediate death. He reflects that his duties leave him little rest, yet Laura worries that her condition has already burdened him greatly. She recounts how Isaac searched for help, while also retrieving dragon blood flowers. Many refused after hearing the request involved the dangerous Tarrasque swamp. Despite the risks, the undead adventurer accepted the task. Laura expresses sincere gratitude, while he admits he has gained more than he expected from this visit. Observing her frail state, he realizes she suffers from miasma accumulation syndrome at a young age. Illness progresses slowly over years, eventually taking a life unless dragon blood flowers are continually secured. The undead adventurer recalls that miasma accumulation syndrome reaches its final stage after many years. Seeing her youthful face, he questions whether she was afflicted since birth. Despite her noble bearing, she remains only a young girl burdened by a grave condition. He considers that the disease usually develops from excessive spirit use. Doubt arises about why she needed such power so soon after being born. While searching the pile, he grasps a circular magic tool that suddenly activates and pulls away. He manages to steady himself before losing balance. Laura urgently moves toward him, warning him to step back as the tool reacts unexpectedly. The activated magic tool triggers a violent reaction within the pile. Objects collapse inward as a dark opening forms beneath the scattered artifacts. Debris falls rapidly into the void, while mechanisms hidden inside begin to move. Heavy components shift and assemble within the collapsing mass. She quickly realizes that activation equipment was buried among the stored items. She prepares to search for suspension gear while the situation escalates. From the wreckage, a massive armored construct rises and locks onto the undead adventurer. He stands firm before it as the Guardian prepares to attack. Within the depths of the labyrinth, a gigantic armored golem looms over the cloaked undead adventurer. Shifting stone and alchemical components grind against each other, while the creature advances. Suddenly, the towering construct surges forward, its core shining intensely. Heavy footsteps tremble across the chamber as he braces for the clash. With overwhelming force, its strike smashes the ground apart. Broken fragments scatter across the hall, revealing its immense power. Energy condenses at the glowing core before erupting outward as a magic cannon, consuming the surroundings in a violent explosion. A violent blast spreads through the chamber as the massive golem emerges from smoke and debris. From behind shattered stone, the undead adventurer studies the construct closely. The energy radiating from its body feels far greater than ordinary materials would allow. Nearby, a silver-haired woman observes the scene and recognizes its nature. This rare golem is formed from magic tools, created only once within the labyrinth. Both figures remain atop broken rubble, while dust falls around them. They understand that such constructs collapse once their stored magic is depleted. As fragments scatter, the golem begins absorbing surrounding magic tools to increase its size. Its own core serves as the source of its growing power. The golem raises a massive cannon, like arm, and fires again. In response, a spherical barrier forms around the undead adventurer. Understanding the threat, the silver-haired woman decides to search for the controlling device hidden deeper within the ruins. She prepares to move, knowing it will take several minutes. Meanwhile, the enraged golem rampages across the shattered floor. Dust and debris rise as it charges toward the barrier protecting its opponent. Heavy punches crash repeatedly against the shield, testing its limits with relentless force. Even as a magic gun fires at close range, the adventurer struggles to maintain the barrier, aware he cannot endure much longer. Its body expands, damaged parts restore, and magic power surges through its frame, as surrounding tools are drawn in automatically brilliant. Light gathers at its core, mechanical arms spread wide while energy condenses into a concentrated sphere above it. Explosive blasts rain down across the chamber. Each strike strengthens the construct further, increasing its output with every attack. Total firepower. Salvo erupts, flooding the area with continuous beams that tear through stone and force the defender to remain inside his barrier. Amid the bombardment, the undead adventurer steadies himself. Even if his body is shattered, he resolves not to yield while the raging golem advances. The silver-haired woman recalls that advanced golems bear a carved magic word on their foreheads, a mark connected to the concept of truth. Inside the barrier, the undead adventurer considers this clue while facing the charging construct. The golem swings its weapon and fires again, forcing him to maneuver carefully within the shrinking space of protection. Through the chaos, he directs his attention toward the creature's head, searching for the engraved word said to control it. As light flashes across its metal face, he sees only smooth armor. No carving appears on its forehead, leaving him momentarily stunned while the golem presses forward. The undead adventurer lunges forward, aiming directly at the golem's head. His blade clashes against reinforced armor, while the construct counters with a sweeping strike. A mechanical arm extends suddenly, forcing him to twist mid-air to avoid being seized. The narrow escape reveals a brief opening in the golem's movements. Seizing the moment, he gathers magic within his barrier and unleashes a combined technique, directing concentrated energy toward the core. The blast detonates against the golem's chest, damaging its mechanism and slowing its advance. Fragments scatter as its output falters. Before the smoke clears, the construct stabilizes itself and begins charging power once more, preparing another relentless assault. Shattered fragments of magic tools scatter through the air as the damaged construct breaks apart. From the wreckage, another mechanical form begins assembling itself. Metal limbs and weapon parts twist together, revealing that more than one entity has been created. Soon a second golem stands beside the first, both towering over the lone figure in the ruined chamber. Their cores glow as they prepare to attack together. Thrown back across the cracked floor, the adventurer rises slowly. Facing two enhanced constructs confirms the situation has worsened. Energy builds within both machines at once, their cannons charging in unison as the labyrinth trembles under the threat of simultaneous fire. Both golems gather a massive sphere of light above them, preparing to unleash a combined blast. Before the attack falls, a commanding force interrupts the flow. A powerful wave descends from above, distorting the space and halting the charged magic mid-air. The suspended energy collapses violently, detonating against the walls and tearing apart stone pillars. When the dust settles, the adventurer remains standing, shield lowered as the golems crumble nearby. Realization dawns that outside intervention saved him. Amid the ruined hall, two figures approach quietly. Relief replaces tension as the battle finally comes to an end. After the battle, the silver-haired woman lowers her head slightly, while the undead adventurer watches in silence. Turning toward the ruins, he surveys the heavy destruction left behind. The shattered hall and scattered debris show how intense the clash had been. Among the broken remains, fragments of the golems lie across the floor. He steps forward calmly, intending to gather the pieces and prevent future danger. Deep within the labyrinth, a gigantic stone golem emerges, towering over the scattered adventurers. A concentrated strike shatters the creature's core, sending fragments across the battlefield. Layers of magic circles expand outward while distant witnesses observe the collapse. Once the fighting ends, nobles and their attendants stand composed, One man calmly pours tea as they survey the ruined field and measure the consequences. Attention turns to damaged equipment and surviving artifacts. Several magic tools retain repair functions, though most cannot return to their original state. Across the grass, the destroyed golem lies motionless, its immense body reduced to debris, remembered as a weapon born within the labyrinth. Within the dark labyrinth, Rent studies the fallen golem and realizes it draws power from absorbed magic tools. As he reflects, determination replaces hesitation. If he lacks the strength to defeat monsters like that, his dream of becoming a mithril class adventurer will remain unreachable. A familiar sensation stirs inside him, recalling the surge of power he felt before evolving into a ghoul. That same satisfaction signals another possible transformation. Rent considers the conditions required and senses enough magical energy gathering within his body to trigger change. Nearby, a companion watches him calmly, suggesting he collect magic tools as the next step forward. Rent assures the others that he is unharmed after the battle. The young noblewoman informs him that restoration work in the area is nearly complete and offers him time to rest if needed. A tall attendant agrees to make arrangements while Rent decides to proceed without delay. He then raises a serious question about whether more golems like the previous one exist. Surprise crosses the noblewoman's face as she processes his concern. The atmosphere grows tense at the possibility of another hidden threat. From the ruined field, the attendant promises to report quickly if similar constructs are discovered nearby. Later, they present several recovered magic tools, carefully explaining their functions and potential uses. They display several artifacts, including a tube that triggers explosions, a device that allows its user to float, and a tool that creates a protective barrier. Additional items are presented, such as equipment that neutralizes poison and armor that can move on its own when supplied with magic power. More specialized tools appear, including devices meant for exploring labyrinths and one capable of altering a voice or reshaping a weapon formed from a magic blade. Faced with many choices, Rent carefully considers how each option would affect future conquests, knowing that one decision could change the difficulty of his path. Standing inside the storage room, he reaches a conclusion about the single tool he needs most. At the estate under the night sky, Rent confirms his selection and decides to take the chosen item without hesitation. The scene shifts to a quiet landscape beneath the moon, marking the passage of time before the tool is tested. Inside a small house, light filters through the windows as preparations are made to activate the artifact. A woman examines the object and understands the reason behind his choice. The device reveals the shape of a miniature airship resting on a table. When magical power flows into it, the model responds and begins to function, proving it is not a simple replica, but a working airship. Inside the room, Rent channels magic into the miniature airship. The small craft rises smoothly and hovers in the air, proving it can float on its own. With a handheld controller, he guides the vessel forward. The airship responds precisely, shifting direction as it moves across the room. The woman watching him grows puzzled by his calm reaction, unable to understand his lack of visible excitement. He reflects on the achievement, recognizing that creating a functional airship in such a compact form is remarkable. Beyond simple flight, the device recreates the full experience of being aboard an airship, revealing abilities that extend further than expected. The miniature airship glows as it hovers, its detailed structure shining under the light. He explains that the true value lies not in admiration but in the rare chance to experience riding an airship within their own lives. Attention shifts to the origin of the item, taken from a noble family's treasured collection of magic tools. Its selection reflects personal preference rather than pure strategy. Rent admits the airship is partly for his own interest, a choice driven by curiosity as much as utility. As compensation for the earlier golem incident, he also receives a sealed bottle filled with blood, presented as an additional item. Rent holds the sealed bottle firmly and concludes that its contents may serve as the catalyst for his next evolution. The woman watches closely, seeking clarification about what he truly means by evolution and how the blood connects to it. Dark energy swirls within the container, revealing that the liquid inside is vampire blood. The revelation signals both opportunity and danger. She analyzes his lineage, noting that while his base is a corpse, the higher branch points toward a vampire. The unstable flow of evolution makes the outcome uncertain. Recalling the power he sensed before, Rent considers the risk, aware that success and destruction stand equally possible. Rent reflects on his weakness during the battle and renews his resolve to grow stronger, aiming one day to stand as a mithril class adventurer. 10 years of effort weigh behind him, yet his determination has not faded. Holding the bottle, he declares that he will continue forward as long as he is able. He warns that once the blood is used, he may lose control and become a threat again. The risk of attacking those nearby remains real. The woman accepts this possibility without hesitation and prepares herself to act decisively if he turns violent. Surrounded by books and scattered papers, they share a quiet understanding, each ready to face whatever outcome follows. With resolve set, Rent opens the sealed bottle and prepares himself. The moment arrives, and he decides to proceed without hesitation. He lifts the container and drinks the vampire blood in deep gulps. The woman watches closely as the last drops disappear. After finishing, he steadies himself and senses a strange fullness spreading through his body. The empty bottle falls aside as the change begins. A sharp tingling rises within him, close to the feeling he once struggled to suppress. Instincts stir violently, pushing him toward aggression. Suddenly, power erupts from his chest in a violent burst. His body convulses as the transformation forces its way forward. Energy bursts violently from Rent's chest, tearing through his body as tendrils spread outward. The woman recoils as dark, root-like veins expand across the room. The transformation grows unstable, twisting his form further. At the center of the chaos, his body reshapes into a new figure. Power surges through him as the evolution advances beyond control. A grand estate stands silent as a woman watches from a distant pavilion. She learns that the adventurer chose the blood path, accepting a dangerous change within himself. Inside, two women observe a burning orb. They note that his composition differs from others, and suspect he may entrust the research to a trusted scholar. One woman calmly drinks tea while considering his nature as an adventurer. She reflects that outcomes rarely follow expectations but confirms she followed prior instructions. Far away, his body mutates. Dark flesh spreads over bone as a new lineage awakens. In a library, a woman studies the transformation. She realizes this evolution surpasses previous changes. A mass of dark flesh wraps tightly around his body, sealing him inside like a cocoon. Light gathers around the surface while a woman watches from a distance close by. She studies the sight with steady eyes, realizing the creature within is attempting to be reborn through forced evolution. Inside the shell, his skeletal hand stretches toward a distant glow, driven by instinct rather than thought. Red darkness surrounds him as pain spreads through every part of his body, crushing his awareness. Flesh tears and reforms violently. His body melts, vision distorts, and overwhelming agony signals the birth of a new existence. His body collapses inward as flesh dissolves and bones scatter. Awareness begins to fracture while pain consumes every nerve. Despite the agony, fear does not follow. Darkness swallows sensation. A strange clarity remains, yet he feels detached, as if life has already left him. The cocoon holds only a formless mass where a body once existed. Thoughts expand beyond the shell, spreading outward like ripples across a vast world. Each idea echoes endlessly before fading. Memories surface briefly, stirred by emotion, then dissolve into fog. Identity weakens with each passing moment. A lone skull rests in emptiness. Questions linger about whether he was human or something else entirely. Within the fading darkness, a memory forms. He recalls his wish to rise as a mithril, class adventurer, a goal that once guided every step of his journey. A younger version of himself appears, gripping a simple weapon and looking toward a distant light. The image shifts to a figure he admired, someone who could not fulfill her own dreams. Another memory follows, showing a woman who now walks beside him. The thought of returning to her strengthens his fading sense of self. Steady pulse echoes in the void as he remembers his friends and clings to life. A bright core forms within the void as his resolve resurfaces. The desire to become a mithril class adventurer and fulfill his promise pulls his scattered remains together. At the center, something pulses like a heart around it. Hardened structures take form while organs settle into place. Flesh tightens over the frame, rebuilding what was lost. Thick liquid flows through newly formed vessels, spreading life through the structure. Recognition follows as he understands the substance moving inside him. Sudden hunger rises. The body demands more blood than it possesses, and the craving intensifies beyond control. Standing amid ruin, he accepts the truth of his nature. An endless thirst defines his rebirth. A violent surge erupts as dark wings burst from his back. Energy scatters across the chamber while the woman stands firm before him, watching his transformation reach its peak. Hovering above shattered stone, he reveals a new form, shaped by bone and flesh. The power radiating from his body fills the space with pressure and debris. Fangs extend as he grins, driven by overwhelming hunger. Blood stains his face, while instinct overtakes reason. Suddenly, his strength falters. The wings stiffen. Then his body collapses forward, crashing onto the ground before her stunned gaze. Later, he awakens in a quiet room. Though altered, his awareness returns, and the woman observes him carefully. He wakes in a quiet room and learns that 2 days have passed. Weakness lingers in his body, while the woman nearby continues reading calmly. She explains that she spent the time studying numerous texts. Despite the damage caused during his transformation, she managed to repair most of the surroundings. Turning toward him, she examines his altered features, noting pale skin, sharp fangs, and bat-like wings, concludes that he was not turned by another vampire but evolved independently, making him an unusual existence. Ancient titles and rare classifications come to mind, leaving his true rank uncertain. Now fully awake, he stands before her as she decides to conduct proper tests. Determining his exact type becomes her next objective. She directs attention to the wings spread behind his back and asks him to move them. He attempts to respond, uncertain how they function. The wings twitch awkwardly, reacting on instinct rather than command. He realizes he has been moving them without conscious control. With effort, he focuses and manages a slight motion. The movement remains clumsy, far from natural mastery. She suggests channeling magic through them. When he tries, the wings resist, leaving the possibility of flight unresolved. He channels ki and spirit energy through his body. Instead of true flight, his feet lift slightly as if buoyed by invisible force. A sudden surge of ki bursts outward. Shelves shatter and debris scatters across the room, forcing her to retreat from the impact. Drops into the rubble, admitting the power is difficult to control. Floating magic and ki appear to be driving his movements rather than pure wing strength. When he tries spirit energy alone, the wings only emit a faint glow. A small creature brushes against them and recoils in pain. Light gathers around his fingers and minor wounds begin to close under its radiance. He concludes that combining floating magic with ki propulsion may allow true flight. The idea gives him a clear direction for training. Outside near a rocky hill, preparations are completed. Protective spells are arranged across the area to reduce potential damage from his attempt. Standing atop the rock, he spreads his wings and begins gathering energy. Magic stabilizes his body while ki concentrates within his limbs. He launches forward. Floating magic keeps him suspended as he adjusts his balance in midair. Channeling ki, he accelerates sharply and rises along the cliff face, proving that controlled flight is finally within reach. High above the cliffs, magic keeps his body suspended while ki thrusts him forward. Wind tears past his wings as distance from ground widens rapidly. Vast plains and mountains stretch beneath him. Exhilaration replaces tension, and laughter escapes as he circles through open sky, marveling at view once reserved for birds. Sudden instability disrupts rhythm of his wings. Lift vanishes without warning, sending him plunging downward in confusion. Impact follows beyond protected boundary, scattering dirt and leaves through forest clearing. She rushes over, assessing damage after reckless descent. Minor cuts seal under faint glow from his wings, proving how efficiently new body restores itself. Seated beneath tall trees, he notices vines sprouting around his wings. Question about his first use of spirit power brings back an old memory. Recollection surfaces of a broken shrine near his village. After repairing it, spirit energy began responding to him for the first time. She considers connection between that shrine and forest gods. Spirit power, often described as blessing from such beings, may explain plants reacting to his presence. Flight, unnatural strength, and influence over magical creatures highlight distance from ordinary humanity. Despite doubts, reminder comes that identity is not defined solely by transformation. Hope remains that future evolution will not erase who he truly is. She extends her hand and reminds him that as long as his dream remains unchanged, he will not lose himself. His goal of becoming a mithril class adventurer still defines him. He reflects on her words and realizes his thoughts and expressions feel closer to his former self after evolving. Recognition settles quietly within him. Standing before him, she welcomes him back and offers her hand in reassurance. He accepts it without hesitation. Their hands clasp firmly beneath the trees, marking his return and renewed resolve to move forward. Surrounded by dense trees, a quiet mansion rises in silence. Its tall structure suggests a place of importance and hidden matters. Across the path, a cloaked undead adventurer approaches alongside a composed woman. Their arrival is steady as they move toward the entrance. At the doorway, a young maid greets them after recognizing the visitor. She informs them that medicine is currently being prepared for Mrs. Lillian inside. With cautious eyes, the maid studies the unfamiliar woman. The adventurer presents her as Lorraine, a scholar experienced in research and sorcery. After hearing the explanation, the maid nods in understanding. Although still uncertain, she accepts Lorraine's presence for the time being, near the entrance. Rent decides to step inside first, while Lorraine remains behind to speak with Elise. Inside the hall, Elise approaches, Lorraine with direct curiosity. She confirms Lorraine's status as a silver-grade adventurer and observes her calmly, Suspicion soon surfaces as Elise mentions hearing that Rent has gained another female acquaintance. The remark carries doubt about Lorraine's connection to him. Protective feelings rise within Elise as she questions the growing number of women around Rent. After expressing her thoughts, she lowers her gaze and reflects that Rent remains unaware of such tensions. Lorraine steps closer to Elise and calmly studies her with sharp focus. She assures the girl not to be afraid and quietly measures her condition through careful observation. Above the forested grounds, the air feels tense. As Lorraine instructs Elise to remain where she is, the examination continues without interruption. Elsewhere inside the mansion, prepared herbs and tools rest on a table as Mrs. Lillian is asked about her health. Rent listens as the illness is identified as a buildup of harmful energy. The cause of her past discomfort becomes clear. The proper ingredients already gathered. Rent explains that continued medicine will soon restore her strength. With his cloak drawn close, Rent explains that completing the task was part of his own decision. He mentions accepting it as a bronze request and assures them that payment is unnecessary. Gratitude fills the room as thanks are offered for protecting Elise and the children. The atmosphere softens with relief. From her bed, Mrs. Lillian reflects that their help feels like a miracle. She asks about Elise's whereabouts. At that moment, Lorraine enters with Elise beside her, stating that the girl had been speaking with her. Standing calmly, Lorraine introduces herself as both scientist and sorcerer, formally greeting Mrs. Lillian. Inside the quiet room, Lorraine states that she wishes to discuss Elise. She also acknowledges her connection to Rent as a silver-grade adventurer. Turning serious, Lorraine prepares to speak honestly. Mrs. Lillian listens carefully, asking what Lorraine intends to request regarding the girl. With steady resolve, Lorraine declares her intention to take Elise as her apprentice. The announcement surprises Mrs. Lillian. Elise looks forward as the idea of training under Rent and Lorraine is revealed. The path of learning swordsmanship and magic is presented to her. Concern appears as Mrs. Lillian questions the hardship of such a life. Lorraine explains that she seeks proper permission before moving forward. With firm confidence, Lorraine states that Elise possesses enough talent to become a sorcerer. However, she adds that the girl's true path depends on her own willingness. Recalling her earlier examination, Lorraine explains that she measured Elise's magical capacity using a special ability. She further clarifies that, with dedication, Elise could even reach the rank of court sorcerer. Such a position holds great honor within the kingdom. The weight of that title astonishes Mrs. Lillian, who struggles to believe it. Lorraine calmly insists that the potential truly exists within Elise. Even so, Lorraine concludes that the final decision must belong to the girl herself after proper training. Seated on her bed, Mrs. Lillian admits that the proposal feels sudden and difficult to process. The weight of the decision leaves her visibly unsettled. Seeking clarity, she agrees to arrange a separate room so Lorraine and Elise can speak in private. Outside the mansion, clouds drift slowly above the treetops. Time passes as the household prepares for what may come next. Quiet corridors and empty balconies reflect the stillness within the estate. The air carries a sense of anticipation. Far above, an airship moves across the sky, signaling activity beyond the mansion and hinting at approaching developments. Outside, children gather around as an airship model flies overhead. They admire Rent's skill, believing such a complex design reflects remarkable craftsmanship. Standing before the building, Lorraine and Rent observe quietly. The mood between them feels thoughtful rather than celebratory. Rent reflects that the decision must be difficult for Mrs. Lillian, especially within an orphanage where responsibility weighs heavily. Inside, a mother's concern becomes clear as she considers her daughter's safety. The dangerous path of an adventurer troubles her deeply. Understanding this conflict, Rent urges Lorraine to see the matter from a parent's perspective. The final choice rests on balancing protection and freedom, facing the forest beyond the fence. Rent and Lorraine admit that their proposal may have burdened Lillian. He reflects that they now stand at a turning point, where Lillian's life has been saved and Elise's future must be considered carefully. Responsibility weighs heavily on him. Lorraine accepts that whatever decision is made, they must respect it. Both silently agree to face the outcome with sincerity. Inside the quiet room, Elise stands before Lillian's bed. The atmosphere feels serious yet gentle. With steady resolve, Elise speaks from the heart, while Lillian listens closely, preparing to respond to her daughter's wish. Light fills the room as Lillian gently takes Elise's small hands within her own. The gesture carries warmth and quiet resolve. Standing beside the bed, Elise holds her mother's hands firmly. Determination shows in her eyes as she faces the future she has chosen. A soft smile appears on Lillian's face while she keeps their hands together. Acceptance slowly replaces her earlier hesitation. Tears gather in Elise's eyes as emotion overwhelms her. Lillian leans forward and embraces her daughter with care. Nearby flowers rest in silence, marking the moment when a mother supports her child's decision to walk her own path. Footsteps echo along the wooden floor as someone rushes toward the balcony. Sunlight pours through the tall windows, brightening the quiet hall. Outside, Elise runs forward with raised arms, unable to hide her joy. Lorraine and Rent watch as the girl moves toward her new future. The mansion stands peacefully among the trees, holding the memory of the decision made within its walls. Change has quietly begun. Far across the open plains, a carriage travels along a wide road toward the distant city. The journey ahead stretches long and uncertain. From inside the moving carriage, Lorraine gazes out the window. The orphanage fades behind them as a new chapter begins. Upon arriving at Malt City, a young woman looks out from the carriage with a serious expression. Seated inside, she listens as her duties are outlined, including healing, purification, and public preaching. The responsibilities appear heavier than she anticipated. After stepping down from the carriage, she composes herself despite doubts about hidden intentions from those above her. Holding a sacred book, she accepts her position as the Holy Maiden Murius, prepared to fulfill her assigned role. The Lobelia faith rises as a powerful religious force in the Western Holy Ars kingdom. Its doctrine centers on the goddess Lobelia, believed to have created the world. Meanwhile, the eastern borderlands remain devoted to the Eastern heavenly faith. More than half of the population follows this belief, creating a clear religious contrast between regions. Within the city stands an imposing cathedral. Two visitors stop before its entrance, studying the structure and its symbolic presence. The priestess grows uneasy while reflecting on the church's future control. Doubt surfaces as she evaluates the cathedral's scale and overall significance. Inside the building, the atmosphere feels neglected. The structure resembles a stable more than a sacred place, and the condition leaves a poor impression. Outside, only a few pedestrians pass by without stopping. The church receives little attention, and its size seems excessive compared to the small number of visitors. Within the hall, several people sit quietly, but most rarely attend to pray or listen to sermons. The space remains largely empty. Rows of bottles containing high-grade holy water are displayed, suggesting commercial intent rather than devotion. Concern grows as the priestess reflects on the borderlands and wonders how the Great Holy Father would judge this situation. The missionary explains that the Lobelia faith carries out its work without bias. Even Murasama's expedition is considered minor, and the troubling state of the region has led to her assignment there. Hearing this, the priestess reflects that others might have been more suitable for spreading the faith, yet she remains quiet and composed. Several children rush toward her, showing trust and familiarity. Their presence reminds her that certain responsibilities can only be fulfilled by her. She listens as guidance is offered, encouraging her to seek wisdom from the goddess Lobelia to resolve the situation. A gentle smile appears as she accepts the children's closeness, strengthening her resolve. The discussion turns to plans for a sermon scheduled a week later. Formal procedures must be completed beforehand, and preparations continue within the church. Attention shifts to an influential figure in town whose relatives suffer from a severe illness. An introduction to this person becomes necessary to secure support. While speaking with a child, the priestess hears the idea of offerings exchanged for healing. The concept troubles her as she listens carefully. Clarification follows, that offerings are gifts of gratitude for divine protection, not simple payment for miracles. When asked whether healing depends on money, doubt spreads. The priestess moves to treat an injured animal, proving compassion stands above payment. Holding the injured animal, the priestess admits that the world contains many troubles and unresolved matters. Even so, she believes seeking help from the gods remains meaningful. The small creature relaxes in her hands. She reassures it gently, trusting that divine protection watches over those in need. Suddenly, the animal leaps from her arms toward a nearby child. The unexpected movement startles everyone in the hall. Relief follows as the children safely catch it and express gratitude. The priestess smiles warmly, pleased to see their joy. From a distance, her companion observes quietly, gripping a document as a new realization begins to form. Inside the church, the missionary informs Murasama that the situation has changed, and that he now oversees matters concerning offerings. The sudden announcement catches her attention. He presents an imperial order issued by the Great Holy Father. The document confirms a direct command addressed specifically to her. Reading the contents, she learns that she will accompany a designated individual from this point forward. Standing alone in the vast hall, she struggles to understand the meaning behind the order while the city stretches beyond the cathedral walls. Elsewhere, at a guild dissection site, preparations continue as new arrivals gather for the task ahead. At the guild site, Scaffolding surrounds the massive Tarask remains. An apology is offered for the delay as workers continue their tasks. The appraisal has already been completed. A masked worker confirms the evaluation and waits for further instructions. Reports indicate that if placed in auction under good conditions, the market price could reach 1 1/3 its standard value. Plans for selling are carefully considered. Quality is not the issue. Because of the creature's high value, the auctioneer prefers direct delivery to a customer instead of a public sale. With circumstances changing, the enormous carcass is prepared for transport while decisions move forward. News spreads that the Tarask's price at auction has doubled. The unexpected result draws attention from influential buyers. Interest grows quickly, and a request arrives to meet the adventurer who defeated the creature. The buyer insists on speaking directly with the hunter. Their careful judgment suggests strong interest rather than simple curiosity. They express admiration for the monster's excellent condition, and likely wish to build a connection with the one responsible for the hunt. Despite the opportunity, final approval depends on the adventurer's consent before any direct arrangement can proceed. The masked worker leaves the decision to the adventurer, explaining that acceptance or refusal rests entirely in his hands. The offer requires a clear answer. Cloaked hunter remains silent for a moment, weighing the risks and benefits of meeting the buyer directly. At last, he agrees to the meeting. Arrangements move forward as direct negotiation may secure a higher price for the Tarask remains. Further details reveal that the auction is managed by the Steno Company, a name with influence in the region. Information continues as their broad operations become clear, spanning auctions, retail, trade, and urban ventures, marking them as a powerful enterprise. Work at the dissection site nears completion, and responsibility is handed over to another worker. Gratitude is exchanged for earlier assistance. Despite outward composure, lingering concern remains about the sudden change in circumstances. An uneasy feeling surfaces, difficult to explain. Instinct suggests caution, as dealing with influential merchants rarely comes without complications. Reassurance follows that accepting the meeting may still be worthwhile. Those involved are not individuals to treat lightly, and careful judgment is required. Confidence returns with quiet resolve. Continued evolution promises strength enough to face whatever trouble might arise. Overlooking the city, he recalls surviving the dragon and senses misfortune approaching from someone hidden within shadows. Malt City stretches beneath a bright sky, its streets filled with merchants and travelers. Within a narrow district, a cloaked skeleton moves quietly through the crowd, while daily trade continues around him. Closer to the center, the undead adventurer keeps his skull hidden beneath a fur-lined hood. Behind him, a tall tower rises over the busy city. Ahead lies the central shopping district, packed with buyers and sellers. Guards remain stationed near the walls as business carries on. Through tight alleys and open paths, streams of people pass without noticing his true nature. From the edge of the market, he studies the surroundings and considers his next move. Large buildings rise over the crowded district as citizens move along the main road. Among them, a cloaked skeleton advances toward a specific destination. In front of a tall structure marked as the Steno Company, he stops and looks up at the many windows inside. A staff member greets him formally and confirms his purpose regarding the sale of a Tarask. The visitor follows through the corridor. After learning that the company head is occupied, he is directed toward a reception area to wait. Soon, they stand before a newly installed magical elevator, preparing to ascend further into the building. The employee begins guiding the cloaked skeleton through the company facilities. He explains that their store is the only one in Malta equipped with a magical elevator. On the first and second floors, shops display daily necessities and equipment for adventurers. Fresh food fills the shelves, preserved with recently introduced ice magic tools. Higher up, the third floor functions as a vast warehouse packed with supplies. Above it, the fourth floor serves as the office where transactions are managed. At the top level, he is led into an elegant reception room and asked to wait. Seated alone, he reflects on the scale and wealth of the Steno Company. In the quiet reception room, tea and cakes are placed before the cloaked skeleton. He observes the refined service and the scale of the company's operations. After tasting the tea, he calmly reflects on its quality while an attendant withdraws from the room. Soon, a well-dressed man enters and introduces himself as the owner of the Steno Company. He confirms the visitor's identity as the adventurer who hunted the Tarask. The owner offers an apology for the delay and promises proper compensation, extending his hand in greeting. Standing face to face, they prepare to discuss business regarding the rare monster. During their discussion, the cloaked skeleton questions the owner's earlier statement. The merchant admits he allowed a subordinate to inspect the Tarask instead of handling it personally. He explains that trust is essential in business and insists there was no intention to deceive. The adventurer listens carefully, studying his reaction. Clarification follows as the owner states they plan to pay more than the expected market price. A sudden knock interrupts the negotiation. An attendant announces the arrival of a respected guest. The owner permits her to enter the room. A composed woman in sacred attire steps inside, immediately drawing the undead adventurer's attention. The woman steps forward and introduces herself as Maraise Liza, a saint of Lobelia. She bows with composure, presenting her identity with formal grace. Without warning, a bright light gathers around her staff, filling the reception room. The sudden radiance draws the attention of both the merchant and the cloaked skeleton. Energy spreads across the ceiling in a sharp arc, reacting strongly to the presence of the undead adventurer. She studies him carefully and recognizes that he can use spirit power. Realization settles between them. Suspicion deepens as she concludes his arrival was no coincidence, surprising the company owner. A confident young woman appears at the doorway, smiling as she steps inside without hesitation. Her presence shifts the atmosphere of the room. The merchant reacts with surprise at her sudden arrival. She offers a brief apology for the interruption while moving closer to the group. Introducing herself as Niv Maris, a gold-class adventurer, she stands proudly before them. Her sharp gaze settles on the cloaked skeleton. Calmly she reveals that she specializes in hunting vampires. The statement hangs heavily in the air. Behind his hood, the undead adventurer realizes the situation has become far more dangerous than before. Niv Maris stands confidently, known across the region as a gold-class adventurer who rose to fame by hunting vampires. Her reputation precedes her wherever she goes. Rumors claim she once destroyed an entire village to eliminate a nest of vampires. The dramatic tale still lingers in people's minds. Behind his hood, the undead adventurer wonders why someone surrounded by such stories has appeared here. Facing him directly, she questions his presence as well, creating a tense standoff in the reception room. Suddenly her tone shifts as she casually explains she cannot hunt Tarasques during the day, leaving him momentarily confused. Explains that sunlight weakens her body like a toxin, leaving her exhausted for days if exposed too long. She compares it to someone falling ill from alcohol. Turning back to the Tarasque matter, she describes how such hunts usually require a full party. Her words flow easily as she outlines the usual risks. The saint listens with a serious expression, noting that purification rituals and additional costs are often necessary after such battles. Niv then praises the unusual condition of this Tarasque, pointing out that its material remains intact and valuable. With a sharp smile, she questions how anyone could avoid being affected by its poison. As suspicion rises, the undead adventurer realizes he cannot allow his true nature to be exposed. He quickly offers an apology for speaking carelessly, trying to control the situation. Niv watches him closely, suggesting that cooperation would be easier if matters are viewed from a different angle. Curiosity shifts toward the saint, whose earlier reaction hinted at something unusual during the purification. She reveals that she sensed resonance with his spirit energy, noting that such ability is rare among adventurers. Across the room, Niv calmly admits she can also use spirit power, deepening the tension surrounding him. Niv casually denies any jealousy while standing beside the saint, keeping her tone light despite the earlier tension. With a confident smile, she demonstrates a controlled display of holy flame, drawing surprised reactions from the merchant and the cloaked skeleton. The owner explains that holy flame is regarded as a symbol of wealth and blessing in Lobelia, often carried as a charm for business success. Images of Lobelia's grand structures reflect the widespread reverence for this sacred power among its people. Seizing the moment, Niv suggests that receiving such a blessing could strengthen future promotions and increase the company's profits. Conversation turns toward blessings and donations. Merchant wonders how much must be offered to receive holy flame, while she casually claims she can grant it without charge. With playful confidence, she asks him to kneel, assuring him process will be quick. Embarrassment mixes with curiosity as he complies. Raising both hands, she gathers spiritual energy. Soft light begins to glow around her palms. White flame forms between her fingers, shining brightly and filling room with sacred warmth. Onlookers watch in stunned silence. Radiance expands outward, revealing rare divine power possessed by only a few devoted and highly trained individuals. Saint lowers her gaze and admits jealousy, despite earlier denial. Frustration shows in her expression as she compares herself to the other woman. Standing beside cloaked undead, she confesses envy over a presence she believes unworthy of sacred title. Across room, gold-class adventurer raises both arms and releases gathered power. Radiance surges outward while merchant bows deeply under pressure of holy energy. Kneeling figure trembles as brilliant flame bursts around him. Shock spreads through chamber when light begins shining from within his body. Glow fades, leaving merchant overwhelmed yet unharmed. She declares ritual complete, assuring improved fortune, health, and protection from malicious spirits. Saint questions difference between this display and authentic holy flame. Explanation follows that effect can be strengthened through proper ritual, such as bathing in blessed water. Gold-class adventurer claims her ability differs slightly from standard doctrine. Blessing changes depending on user's control and intention. A confident smile appears as she states her power allows perfect detection of vampires. Certainty fills her voice. Sacred flame reacts violently when touching a true vampire, shifting color and burning target without mercy. Realizing danger of exposure, cloaked figure quickly attempts to redirect conversation, masking unease behind calm response. Attempting to steer discussion away from suspicion, cloaked adventurer compares holy flame to holy water. He recalls earlier remark about evil spirits being extinguished. Calm explanation follows that removing such spirits could interfere with his work, much like losing chance to hunt poisonous tarasques. She listens, then points out practical issue. Without hunting them, supply would vanish. Tone remains light, yet meaning sharp in a blink. She moves before anyone can react. Shock flashes across skull, like face as her presence closes distance instantly. Cold resolve fills her eyes. Purpose remains clear. Existence devoted entirely to hunting vampires. Holy energy erupts from her hand and strikes the cloaked undead at close range. Force of the blast drives him backward as sacred light fills the room. Flame engulfs his skull, burning across bone and cloth. Power roars violently, testing whether his body can endure purification. Within the church hall, a priest approaches an adventurer with a serious request. He seeks assistance at a negotiation and asks for help using spirit purification and poison detection. As the discussion continues, it becomes clear that certain materials will not be exchanged. Reports mention trading dangerous items connected to poison. Suspicion falls on vampires, known for their cunning behavior and hidden toxins. Their presence raises the risk surrounding the meeting. Without warning, battle breaks out. A vampire is struck by a coordinated attack and forced back. Moving quickly, the hunter draws twin blades and delivers the final blow. The hunter charges forward inside the church, swinging both blades downward. Steel cuts through the air as she presses the attack without hesitation. Leaping high, she spins and delivers a powerful slash toward the skeletal adventurer. Despite the heavy blow, the skeleton shows no sign of pain. A priest reaches out in alarm, realizing something is wrong as the hunter prepares another strike. Observation reveals the truth. Holy flames surround the undead figure. Yet he does not burn or suffer as expected from a vampire. Understanding dawns on the hunter. Her mission is to subdue vampires, not harm an adventurer who withstands holy fire without corruption. The skeleton faces the hunter and declares that he is not the same as a vampire. His appearance may resemble one, yet something about him is different. Holy flames continue to cover his body while the hunter holds her blade against him. Instead of agony, he feels only warmth. As the burning sensation fades completely, he explains that he is structurally a ghoul, not a vampire. A merchant bursts forward in confusion and demands an explanation. Concern grows over reputations and the consequences of harming a client, lowering her swords. The hunter admits the misunderstanding. Suspicion of a vampire among those trading dangerous materials led to her actions. A confident smile crosses the hunter's face as she declares she will handle the matter if the threat proves real. Her gaze shows certainty in her duty. The merchant reacts nervously, unsure how to respond as tension lingers in the hall. Placing a hand over her chest, the hunter states she never hesitates against true vampires. Failure to distinguish targets with holy flame, however, changes the outcome. With suspicion cleared, she kneels before the skeletal adventurer and bows deeply in apology for her disrespect. The undead adventurer accepts the situation calmly and states that everything occurred by his own will and strength, taking full responsibility. Discussion shifts to Steno Company, identified as a major contributor of holy water donations. Merchant admits refusing Lobelia's request is difficult due to her religious influence. Pressure from powerful figures leaves little room to decline. Explanation continues. As the capital of Lobelia, located in the Holy Kingdom of Ars, is mentioned. Clarification follows that the decision was made in the name of vampire subjugation. Even so, the merchant had attempted to resist before involving the church branch. Calmly, the hunter reminds them that defeating vampires demands sacrifice, and such responsibility cannot be avoided. The hunter accepts full responsibility and offers compensation. She states that the company will purchase the material above market value as an apology. Skeletal adventurer listens quietly and expresses willingness to move forward without further conflict. With suspicion cleared, He confirms there is no problem. The discussion about buying and selling Tarrasque materials may continue as planned. After the agreement settles, the hunter raises a question. She turns toward the undead adventurer, seeking clarification about one lingering doubt. Curiosity leads her to ask why he was mistaken for a vampire. He answers calmly, stating the explanation will come in time. The undead adventurer reveals a small pouch containing Tarrasque poison glands. He explains that such poison is highly effective against vampires. He warns that vampire hunters often interfere to stop others from obtaining these materials. Details of the processing remain undisclosed, but the danger surrounding it is clear. Involvement in trading Tarrasque materials can easily lead to suspicion. Those who buy and sell them are often thought to be connected to vampires. Discussion shifts as he questions what background led to such doubt about him. The hunter reveals she used her authority as a gold-ranked adventurer to investigate, noting his recent promotion to bronze rank, examining the Tarrasque material. The hunter admits that defeating such a creature alone proves the undead adventurer is far from ordinary. Holding up a document, she compares the situation to a fragile insect consuming a monster. The rapid shift in roles makes it difficult to believe a human could adapt so quickly. Caution remains in the hunter's eyes, as she considers the possibility of an unknown variant, rather than a true vampire. Conversation turns toward wider concerns. Reports mention newly missing adventurers across several regions. Spreading a map across the wall, she points out 13 similar incidents, stretching from Lugera to Aradoras. Standing before the map, the hunter traces a path across several marked cities. By connecting the incidents, she concludes the movement follows a clear west to east pattern. Confidence fills her expression as she states that vampires are behind the disappearances. Records show a corpse once identified as a missing adventurer named Ishiki. Most guild branches treated similar cases as accidents, especially when no body was recovered. Further investigation reveals that multiple vampires had been hiding in one location. The presence of a vampire noble suggests coordination rather than coincidence. Witness accounts describe an entire village overrun by corpses and vampires. Rumors spread of drastic measures taken to eliminate the threat. Flames surge across the field as the hunter finishes recounting her actions. She confirms that every threat in the village was eliminated without hesitation. Returning to the map, she explains that Malt's disappearance period mirrors the timeline of earlier incidents. Analysis suggests the creatures are still hiding within the city. The pattern shows the eastern districts have not yet been struck. Scratching new marks onto the map, she considers Malt's dense population compared to rural towns. With firm certainty, she predicts a coming rebellion of the Turned and warns that the worst feast will occur in this city within 3 months. Within a vast hall, news spreads that the city may soon be overrun by vampires. Tension fills the room as officials grasp the scale of the danger approaching their streets. Detailed reports reveal organized groups establishing bases and attacking nearby villages. Elsewhere, a powerful undead figure considers their motives. He wonders whether hatred drives them, or if pride makes them reject humanity's right to exist. Assessing the rise in missing citizens, a young woman prepares decisive action in Malt, determined to stop the spread. Meanwhile, a church member quietly reflects on when doubt first took root within their order. Niv Maris learns that openly discussing vampire extermination would disturb the balance within the church. A city official explains his deep attachment to the capital where he was raised. Despite efforts focused on urban development, he fears the city will soon face a direct vampire attack. Concerned for the citizens, he seeks guidance on how to prevent the coming threat. Informing trusted allies becomes his first step toward preparation. A quiet strategy is proposed. Eliminate dangers discreetly along remote roads, avoiding public panic and unnecessary attention. Cooperation with Steno Company is requested, while plans are made to respond quickly if vampires move in groups across the city. Niv Maris steps forward and presents a concrete plan to address the coming threat. She explains that the faith of Lobelia can buy time before the attack. Preparations must begin immediately if the city has truly been marked as a target. A bold measure is introduced. Steno Company will temporarily halt donations of holy water. Instead, they will take the lead in installing it throughout the city without charge. Such a proposal risks Marius's standing within the church. Even so, the reduced visibility may cause vampires to hesitate. Accepting her uncertain position, Niv Maris stands firm, ready to act beyond ideology for the city's safety. A young strategist argues that those bound by Lobelia's protection cannot take reckless risks. Standing firm with her staff in hand, Niv reflects on the burden placed upon her. Flexible thinking and quiet resolve define the role she must now accept. Another ally praises the church's decision, expressing gratitude for Marius's cooperation. Discussion turns practical. emphasizing that citywide measures will be more efficient. Cooperation between Steno Company and the Lobelia Faith becomes essential. With renewed focus, the young strategist shifts attention to the hunt ahead, intent on eliminating as many vampires as possible. Inside the hall, a skeletal adventurer assures the others that the city and adventurers can coexist. Curiosity follows as he asks whether some vampires might be friendly. He recalls that different kinds exist, not all driven by hostility. Niv explains that certain vampires desire cooperation and peaceful coexistence with humans. Aggression is not universal among them. However, others disguise themselves as humans to protect their kind. While some openly treat humans as prey, she concludes that although complete eradication is impossible, the origin tied to blood remains dangerous and must be treated as a monster. When asked about her purpose, the young adventurer states that her role is to confront threats that emerge when one species suppresses another. She clarifies that her true objective is to expose the so-called Twilight vampire and bring it under control before greater harm spreads. Others react with surprise, since the Twilight vampire is known only as a legend from fairy tales. Despite doubts, she declares that vampires will always exist, and she intends to keep hunting them regardless of ridicule. As a bronze adventurer aiming for mithril rank, she values the freedom to think independently and move forward without hesitation. The young adventurer reflects quietly, stating that such freedom is the true privilege of her path. With a faint smile, she admits it has been a long time since someone unsettled her thoughts. The encounter leaves a strong impression. Deciding to act, she hands over a small item infused with magic. Her contact methods rely on enchanted tools rather than ordinary means. Device is explained as a detector that will respond if a powerful vampire appears. It serves as both warning and safeguard. She urges careful use at the right moment, trusting intuition to guide the decision when true danger reveals itself. Niv gazes ahead with quiet certainty, convinced that Lent will one day reach out to her. Confidence shapes her calm expression. The skeletal adventurer senses her resolve and admits his intuition is nearly certain. She responds firmly, trusting her judgment without hesitation. Setting aside the city's defenses for later discussion, she shifts the focus toward more immediate business. Interest turns to the Tarrasque and the aftermath of its defeat. The undead adventurer expresses a desire to work together and profit from the opportunity. Attention moves to the auction, where the creature's materials are valued at a high price, making further hunting unnecessary for now. The merchant explains that the final amount is enough to live on for some time. He reveals that an agreement was made to purchase the goods at double the winning bid during the preliminary stage. Coins are laid out as the true figure is clarified: 600 gold coins. The sum far surpasses an ordinary starting price. Skeletal adventurer reacts with visible shock at the doubled amount. The scale of the payment is greater than expected. Still, speculation arises that a reckless auction might have reached 450, especially given how profitable vampire hunting has become. After recalculating the agreement, the merchant concludes that doubling the projected amount would raise the payment to 800 gold coins. Niv studies the skeletal adventurer closely, recognizing his unusual presence. She considers that his strength may prove valuable in pursuing the Twilight vampire. The merchant explains that compensation for taking a life usually ranges between 10 and 50 gold coins, depending on one's profession. She calmly factors in additional compensation, including 50 gold coins tied to the killing itself. Her calculations move swiftly and precisely. With all terms combined, the final total reaches 900 gold coins, sealed as the outcome of their negotiation. Shock spreads across her face as she hears the figure of 900 coins. Such wealth feels distant from anything she has handled before. Calm response follows, pointing out how worn and damaged he appears. Disguise and hardship make the amount seem reasonable in comparison. Sudden boldness changes direction of negotiation. Offer rises to 1,000 gold coins, and agreement is declared without hesitation. High-grade armor, advanced magic tools, and improved research conditions could all be secured with such funds. Quiet observation studies hidden expressions behind a mask. Concern remains visible, despite composed posture, revealing uncertainty about choices still ahead. From above, question arises about whether he intends to purchase anything. Concern lingers over his many responsibilities and future plans. Interest shifts toward a magic bag, rumored to cost around 50 gold coins. Such an item could store massive prey like a Tarrasque with ease. Impressed by his bargaining skill, admiration appears briefly. Negotiation has clearly turned in his favor. Discussion moves to exchanging currency, including possibility of obtaining platinum coins through safer channels. Sudden surge of determination fills room. Offer escalates dramatically, doubling payment to 2,000 gold coins in bold display of confidence. Tension tightens around her gaze as she reminds him that survival still matters. No matter how high he pushes the price, limits remain. Warning follows that further pressure will end negotiations entirely. Startled reaction spreads across both merchant and priest as stakes become clear. Silence lingers for a moment too long. Realizing delay could cancel everything, he quickly accepts conclusion of discussion. After agreement settles, he admits amount is excessive yet cheaper than expected. Relief mixes with disbelief. Elsewhere, conversation shifts to cooperation in vampire subjugation. Question arises about how much support can truly be offered. A platinum coin is presented, its value equal to 10 gold coins. Bright shine draws innocent admiration, while decision about further measures is left to Steno Company and Lobelia. Serious expression follows as possibility of cooperation is considered. Large payment may signal desire for temporary alliance. Information about situation is passed to Adventurers Guild. Concern remains, yet daily life must continue, despite tension. Guild focuses on urgent search for missing individuals, leading to pause in accepting new quests. Activity will resume once crisis settles, even with suspension in place, determination surfaces. A quiet request hints at one task that still needs to be done. She leans across the table, asking about his hometown, while a child below listens quietly, holding a small doll.